Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Aurora. This is my class, Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, and today is August 28th. I'm excited. This is level 1, lesson 16, and this is all about the death journey, where I'm really going to go back to the foundation, the fundamentals of this particular shape and relating this shape to your individual life and your consciousness journey. I know I talk about a wide array of topics in this class. Like last week, we talked about a particular genetic disease and its connections to really being called an interdimensional invader. And also, wait, let me get oops, you tell I just dropped something too. All right, my unmentionables. Wait, no, my unmentionables are not on the right page. Hold on a second. Got to turn to the right page so we can use this for gesturing. Last week, I talked a lot about that genetic invader disease and how that relates to this stuff. And of course, this class is always about flying rainbow lasagna. That is always the focus of this class. So you might wonder, like, what are these different topics and why have I chosen to curate them into this particular curriculum? And they all have a commonality and a thread running through them. So please know and recognize that. Anything that relates to DNA is going to relate to flying rainbow lasagna. Anything that relates to time is going to relate to flying rainbow lasagna. And anything that relates to your trajectory of consciousness, which is what today's lesson is all about, how energy actually flows around this structure here, is going to directly relate to not only your life daily experience and possibly the end of your life experience or transit, your trajectory, I should say, your life trajectory through time. And also, this shape is the immediate precursor to this shape. So anything that relates to time, anything that relates to your chakras, anything that relates to your genetic material, which relates to time, is going to directly relate to flying rainbow lasagna. So try to keep that in mind. I know that this class is many weeks of effort to be able to culminate in the expertise of what the lasagna is, but it's worth it to be along for that particular, for that culmination, for the aha moment. So I'm pulling up my notes over here. And thank you to those people who take the time to read my notes. Wait, here's a person coming into the meeting, so I got to press that. Thank you for taking the time to read the notes, because although they're very bad grammar and very bad spelling, got a lot of good stuff in there that's worth recognizing and reading through. I'm actually just rearranging my screen here so that I can read without looking like I'm looking off into the distance in a weird way. That's not going to work. Hold on. Thank you for apologies for letting me try to work with this. Now crazy things are happening on my screen. Okay, wait, I'm going to get it. Going to get it. Good. Okay. So to begin, let's talk about death in this world is not, start again. Look, in this world, death is looked at as a personified entity. Like the Ingmar Bergman movie, where death is like this shrouded figure, alongside a mythological figure. But death is not a personified figure. It is not an individual. It is not an entity. It is a flowing membrane. When I hold this shape up, this shape represents a simplification of your toroidal energy field. And to reiterate, your toroidal energy field is always going to be the precursor to your higher dimensional toroidal energy field, which is what the flying rainbow lasagna is. This shape is comprised of the fabric of space-time, or the flow of energy that creates the fabric of space-time flowing amidst itself. So if I am pointing to this membrane or this boundary over here, it's not like there's a wall there or something that is a solidified barrier between two places. It's more like a tornado, and the way that there are separate layers of airflow in a tornado that create the shape of the funnel cloud itself, but it is really the atmosphere whirling and swirling amidst itself. When we look at this shape, what we're really looking at is time whirling and swirling amidst itself. And let's return. This is actually from level 1, lesson 1, all about how energy flows through this shape. And I always do this little simplified diagram. I'm going to pull up the whiteboard. When I draw this diagram, you see where I'm kind of like slicing out this bottom quadrant of this shape. That is what I'm going to draw. But I'm going to draw it in my shorthand, and you can see this is a three-dimensional object. Here's a big round circle, but when I draw it with just a flat line at the bottom. Okay, so let's begin with that. Death as a focuser of awareness. Got to pull up the whiteboard. Cool. Get a pen. Just do a little test. Good. That scribble was an unintentional scribble. That scribble is not a part of class and will not be on the test. There will not be a test. This is so hard sometimes. Okay, I won't complain. That's as good as it gets. Okay, so this line that I just drew at the very, very bottom there is analogous to where I was holding my pen at the bottom of that yellow sculpture, okay? And that represents 0, or the starting point of time in your personal experience of time. And let's also go and recognize that each one of these lines, I'm showing it as a line segment, but there is a big giant circle that it's connected to that just is so big, it goes off the edge of your screen. Okay, so please comprehend that this is a segment of that much, much larger structure. And I always overemphasize this little area here that is the wormhole where we experience ascension. And I'll use purple as like the central path of least likelihood. This one pathway that goes, I always show it as going to infinity because that's a shorthand symbol, but you have to comprehend that it doesn't mean it literally goes around in a figure 8 movement like that. When you go up this central core timeline and then get to here, so a wormhole is super exaggerated. Don't spin around in an endless infinity loop. You go into the next level of experience. So this area right here is a doorway through which you are continually entering into and then emerging into finer and finer layers and levels of reality. And what that would look like is you begin at the outer edge. I should make it to scale because it's a much, much smaller, finer level of reality. It's only going to be this big. When you go into that wormhole and you go through it, you emerge at the edge of the next cone-shaped vortex of possibilities. I like what Pedra's saying. I'll respond to that in a moment. And then you begin to explore these various arrangements of time in the next layer of reality. When I draw this, I also always draw, let's just get a different color, a very contrasted color so you can see what I'm talking about. Every single one of these lines, these are actually spiral lines that go all the way around like this, but I draw them as lollipops that are sticking straight up. And when I draw them in this flat cross-section diagram, please know that they're coming in from both sides, both the left and the right side, so that it's not like you're reading in English from left to right, and you will fill up the entire left-hand side and then move to the right-hand side. You're really filling up the outermost edges and the outermost periphery first, and then moving inward with each successive lesson that you master, closer and closer to that central core timeline. And now let's do a really hugely exaggerated, this is not how big and fat this membrane is, but I'm going to draw it so that way we have plenty of space to be able to diagram what's happening there. But really the membrane is a very, very slender place, just like this wormhole over here is a very, very tiny place. So my drawing is not drawn to scale. Please know and comprehend that. So every single one of these red timelines is not an ascension timeline. It is a timeline that ends in death. And we also need to make a big distinction between what has occurred in human death, or even animal death, or insect death, or plant death, or planetary death, or star death in the past, versus in contrast to what has been happening since the deployment of certain technologies around your planet, because you're not in the same level of opportunity that you have been in since they deployed the satellites around Earth. So if I just draw this for you to take away any mystery here, here is Earth, right? Beautiful light blue planet. It's got a flat top. I'm so sorry. That's as good as it gets. That looks like a man with hair. Okay, start again. Start again. I can't take it. Okay, let's try it again. It's trying to draw a planet. Let's do it. Okay, it's kind of a planet. And then let's draw sky poops. These are the star poop satellites. I mean, Starlink satellites. I don't know if you can see lots and lots of little red dots. So let's just scribble up here because you can't see those red dots, especially if you're on a tiny screen. But you know that there's a whole entire grid, many Starlink, star poop satellites that go all the way across our whole entire planet. And what those satellites do is more than a telecommunications infrastructure for connecting people to the internet through their computers. It is a stasis field. So the 5G that is emitted by those satellites, and also other forms of frequency that are emitted all in this stratosphere or upper atmosphere of the planet, creates a limitation shell. Here, I hope you can see me in the thumbnail where I'm kind of gesturing, a shell around your planet. And stasis field, meaning a force field through which consciousness cannot effectively exit. So if you are here on the planet inside of this stasis field and you have a mortality event, your electromagnetic presence, which is your non-embodied soul, cannot get past that force field, that stasis field. And that stasis field wasn't always there. So many people have already referred to Earth as a place where the brightness and fairness and justice of karma has been hijacked. And there's an unfair, let's call it karmic washing machine, where souls, instead of learning and advancing and progressing forward, simply go through the spin cycle over and over and over again, becoming more and more threadbare with each wash, like losing the vividness of your, beautiful prints on your fabric until you're just this drab, limp dish rag of ennui. Because it's very boring to go through these cycles over and over. And that is recognized. And that has been a problem throughout human history. And I will get to my definition of history if you read my notes, which is basically the story of humanity post-flood after the amnesia that was installed into you at what you consider to be the end of Atlantis, but is really concurrent Atlantis. So in correct time language, it would be amnesia, which was incurred in the time when you were incepted from the more expansive reality layer of being in Atlantis and being an immortal, divinely connected God and goddess into this level of mortality, meaning being vulnerable to death, and the fragility of body form that goes hand in hand with that. So I should speak more correctly. You guys are really smart, though, and you don't have a problem with my very nonlinear presentation here. But if I were to speak more correctly, I would say death has not always been a part of the true human experience. Although in this world, it is often presented as a normality and an inevitability. I am here to tell you that in the time known as ancient or concurrent Atlantis, or the time before or distinct from what humans call the fall of consciousness or the fall from grace. But I joke, you guys know my jokes at this point. No, he didn't fall, he was pushed, right? He was pushed from grace. The expulsion from Eden, again, with, that very famous portrayal in art of the angel who is expelling Adam and Eve from the garden, and the angel is pointing out finger like this with a very stern look on their face and is saying, get out, you're not allowed to be in paradise anymore. That, all of that, everything that I just brought up there is probably giving you huge emotional reverberations, because these also relate to genetic perturbations that were placed into humanity that are part of the amnesia, the degradation of your true form, and the translation from being an immortal being to a vulnerable mortal being. If I just go back to my face for this time when I'm talking, and then I'll go back to no, end this part. I just want to talk to people. It's actually a huge trauma and a huge tragedy that has to be acknowledged. You lost something of incredible value. You lost eternal life. That is really the world that we emanate from and the true nature of who and what you are. And then we're non-consensually plunged into this world of fragility, limitation of your existence, and the knowledge of death. Now, this is not part of my notes, but I'll just get into it. Because this really relates to lesson 18. Paige was a good student. He said that. So I didn't even do housekeeping. Next week, we will not be having class because I will be on my wonderful adventure doing my dance retreat in Sedona and transforming the fabric of space-time in a wonderful group dance effort. So I joked you guys can either watch reruns or you can do a little bit of work ahead for motivated students. And Pedro said, yeah, he's going to dive into lesson 18. So lesson 18 is really all about the events that I am not merely alluding to, but openly describing here in today's presentation about death. Nobody used to die. Nobody used to die. Death is an aberration, but another way of saying it is death is a direct artifact of the transformed biology, genetic structure, and reality structure that we have been required to inhabit since what is known as recorded human history, which is the story of consciousness of everything after the events of Atlantis. Even though in correct time language, those events didn't happen yet, they're teetering on the verge, and that's what's about to happen, but we can have a huge impact in our efforts right now to avoid that. So complex languaging structure there. But nobody used to die. That's why you were immortal gods and goddesses. So that does not mean that your chakras were shaped differently. In that time, in the pristine world, you have chakras that are shaped like this. And this area that is this boundary that is known as the membrane of death still exists, but nobody's consciousness ever explored those areas. So if I go back to my wonderful whiteboard now, I will draw it for you. Wait, where's the thing? Squinting, scrolling. If I ever make weird faces, just know this is what's going on. Okay, that's the one. Okay, so what used to happen in ancient concurrent Atlantis, let's just choose a nice color that you can see very effectively. How about green? All right, so here is the source. That is also the destination, and it's the center and convergence point of this sculpture right here, center of my little tiny thumbnail screen, all right? And in ancient concurrent Atlantis, you were emanated outward. Here's a big giant circle, right? Because it's part of a big giant circle. And you didn't start over here. This is where we start in this world of mortality. We didn't start over there. We erase that. What we did was we always started right here. This is like, runners, take your marks. On your mark, get set, go. That is where we started. We started in the perfect initial position to be in alignment with this place here. That's the source and our destination. It's our home, and it is divinity. It is divine consciousness. It is also the singularity. It is the zeroth dimension. It is the origin of not only our consciousness, but of all consciousness. And it is the overlapping convergence point of every single timeline that can be in existence. But clearly, it is not the overlapping convergence point of these timelines over here where I'm scribbling, because those guys all have a final denouement here on the membrane of death. They do not align with this beautiful source and beacon of home. They are off target. So if I drew this from a top-down viewpoint, let's say here's the outer perimeter that represents the outer edge of that vortex. This green dot is the source and infinity and your home beacon of being there. And then you can't really see it because it's going to be hidden, but this would be that purple timeline going up to that dot. And then here's all of the red timelines. All of the red timelines are here where I'm scribbling. I can't take the time to draw 10 million different dots. We'll be here all day, but I would do it for you. Just know that that would be where all of those timelines exist. So all of that red scribble, those are all narratives and stories that do not end in the correct conclusion of your life, which is that you are God. So this moment here, where real timelines converge, represents a consciousness event where your consciousness reconnects to your consciousness as pure divinity. And you have that moment, I am God. And I already talked about this in my lesson that is called the I am God circuit. And so you're already pretty familiar with this, but there's only one timeline, one narrative structure, story structure, and one series of events that brings us from our present level of being embodied in individuation, in materiality and physical density, back to where we are in divine union with God, which would be considered a state of total fastness, like speed, acceleration, total energy, total information, and total brightness of light. Okay? That's where you're getting to. And that's the end of the marathon, but it's not the end, because in that moment of reconnection, there's, of course, the expansion into the next chapter and the next story, the next set of stories that are written, the next potentials that are written. So it's not just like, if you can imagine American, like the American game, baseball, where you have like home base, wait, here, we'll draw it. Here's home base over here. And then you run to first base, then you run to second base, then you run to third base, and then you get back home and you just make a big giant circle. It's not like that. Like, whew, we're done. And now we don't have to do anything ever again. No, we have come here into this, emanated is a better way of saying it. We've emanated here into this level of consciousness and individuation, and that's half of the journey. And then the other half of the journey is when we make the return home, and that's not the end. And then we just sit there in boredom. We were like, that was an interesting journey, and now let's do it again, but slightly different and moving in a slightly different direction, and with more things to learn. Okay, so please understand that we're working in large, enormous galactic time cycles, and these cycles are very positive, because I've already recognized that many people are going through the trauma and the soul ennui and boredom of being just very bedraggled from constantly spinning around here in this particular, I want to say planetary assignment for a long time. But that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a fun adventure where you come here, have your experience, return home with all of your souvenirs, and then go on another adventure. So I recognize that everyone here is kind of, some people are just like, just get me out of here. Just get me out of here. And they're maybe even a little bit like this, a little bit dramatic. Just get me out of here. I can't take it anymore. It is recognized, because you know what? You're not supposed to have to explore all of these erroneous narratives. These are all of the narratives where either things do not make sense, things do not compute, or basically the equation of you does not add up to the conclusion that you are God. And you're not supposed to have to explore all of those areas. So in ancient concurrent Atlantis, I get the green color, we would begin here as the starting point of coming into existence, and then travel up this central core timeline, and then realign with ourselves as God. And that experience might take hundreds or thousands of years. But what we did not do is what we presently do in this world, where there is not only mortality, but you do not have your inner guidance system of your insight and your crown connection guiding you. We were able to make this unwavering journey up the central core timeline because we had a perfectly clean windshield and a perfect map and perfect steering to be able to do that. So no one in ancient Atlantis ever went off track. None of us ever went on this angle over here and ended up where I'm making this green circle in your final denouement, which would be considered the membrane of death. None of us did that. All of us lived a life where every single thought pattern and behavioral pattern was so perfect and so divinely connected, and we knew ourselves as inevitably divine on such a deep level that we never explored any of these false peripheral realities. We played only exactly the correct notes in the cosmic symphony. We were alive and healthy with no disease, no imbalance in our bodies throughout the whole entire experience. And then inevitably came to the self-remembrance of I am God. All right. So what that means in ancient Atlantis, all of these red possibilities where I'm bracketing in here, those were possibilities, but they were never energized. And also where I'm scribbling in green over here, this area is perfectly clear. There were no deaths of plants, no deaths of animals, no deaths of microbes, no deaths of insects, no deaths of nobody. I can't even say it more effectively than that. But I'll use different colors so that we are clear here. Wait, this is what I want. Here, this area here is exactly what it is supposed to be, which is a transit point between worlds, a hallway between dimensions, not a place where any form of life or consciousness is really supposed to be there for any amount of time. Now, this might sound extraordinary because you guys are living in this realm, not only a realm of mortality, but a realm of hugely unjust mortality, where there are circumstances that are similar to this stasis field, technological impediments and contrivances that have blinded humans, made it so you can't see and navigate effectively, set illusions in your path, and even reduced your steering ability so that you don't have your own steering wheel. And that is what has caused humans to go at an angle and to go towards the membrane of death, and even to put their consciousness there as a final moment, whatever the culmination of a series of wrong events that leads you to being dead. And just can't even articulate because it's so distressing. The unfairness of that and how erroneous that is in the larger system of the creation of these chakras and time systems. So when these chakras and time systems were created, they were created not so that we would be imprisoned, or not so that we would experience any level of hell or degradation. But that is not what you're experiencing right now. What you're experiencing right now is absolutely degradation and consciousness degradation, and hell, which is this imprisonment area where I'm scribbling with my pen right now. This is the area that we would know as hell, this barrier between worlds. But hell is also like a hugely mythologized word, and so we have to be cautious about the evocation of what it brings up and different references, how it makes you think of things. because I'm not specifically talking about like the hell of Christianity, a place of lava and pitchforks, but I am talking about a realm that is occupied by negative entities who are consciousness residues, who are fragments, who are insane, who are in the devolving, deconstruction aspect journey of what consciousness is, that torture and imprison consciousnesses like you and I on our journey instead of making our journey in freedom. So, you know, the literary imagery of what is hell is not 100% accurate, but the activity or impact that it has on your consciousness is a fair parallel. Something that torments you and diminishes you in life, and then causes your death, and then imprisons you in the realm of death. So this membrane of death here, it is a flowing membrane. It is not a static place. So the energy is supposed to go from the source and then go around in a big giant circle like this, all right, and back to the source. So you've got a waterfall of energy. So in perfect language, the membrane of death is a waterfall of energy. And I'm trying to show these as like arrows pointing in this direction. That is where the energy flows from the source and then kind of down the slope, right? So the idea is that if you were to do your math homework wrong and end up on the membrane of death, like let's say you've got this guy over here is coming, a consciousness is this red dot and is moving up this line and then made a bunch of wrong moves in their life and then ends up here on the membrane of death. That version of consciousness would have a self-awareness moment of having made many layers of mistakes that brought them to that final denouement or culmination of their life experience. Their consciousness would then be disentangled and deconstructed and flow down in this direction. And then because you have already explored everything that is in this area over here, your consciousness doesn't have to go through all those iterations. It would go over to here, the next level of what you haven't explored yet. So my words aren't saying this correctly, but every single one of these timelines represents an equation of you. Like if I were to draw a little stick figure over here, this is you, and you as a person are the end result of thing one or moment one plus moment two plus moment three plus moment four plus moment five plus blah, 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 10 million moments in your whole entire life equals that final moment of your life. And each one of these moments here, that is the equation of you, is or are a series of decision-making processes that you're experiencing. It has to do with choices that you make. And some of these choices are macroscopic, like when you get to a stop sign, do you choose to turn left or do you choose to turn right? Or, you know, if you are accepted to two different colleges, do you choose to go to college A or college B? But there are also, please know this is how finely branching this time structure is. There are decision-making nodes every time your body metabolizes glucose. Every time your body metabolizes oxygen. Here, I'm going to drink some water. Every time you hydrate and your body makes a choice on the level of your cell membranes about whether that water is going to come into my cell membrane, how many molecules are going to come into my cell membrane. So on one timeline, 1 molecule of water comes in. On another timeline, 2 molecules. On another timeline, 3 molecules. Do you understand how many timelines there are? Think about how many sips of water you have had in your career life as a human being in the realm of mortality. And every single time you drank a gulp of water, there was a proliferation of timelines in front of you that represented on a cellular level choices of metabolism that your body is making about how you are moving through time. And this really does matter. You can comprehend that because what if you drink water, but your body uptakes zero of the molecules? Then, like, you will die. You will die of dehydration, right? And then, of course, what if your body uptakes too many molecules? Then you might die, not of overhydration, but of electrolyte imbalance or some other form of not having correct sodium and potassium within your cells. So your cells have to have their stuff together in making selective choices about the nutrients that are available to them, just as on a macroscopic level, you have to have your stuff together in making good choices at a stop sign. Do you turn right and do you turn left? And also, do you turn directly into the face of incoming traffic? Some of these choices will lead directly to the end of your life. So in the Choose Your Own Adventure novel of your life, a great deal of what you are exploring is within your own control, either on a subcellular level, metabolically, or on an emotional level, or as your larger social emotional presence of macroscopic consciousness making these choices. And also, sometimes there are things that are out of your control. There are a lot of things that are out of your control. You can be making the best choices that you possibly can make, but there can be environmental factors that bring you towards the membrane of death. And that's part of what I was also not merely alluding to, but speaking very openly about in terms of those consciousness residues that have been occupying the membrane of death over here. In this class, we call them those pesky occupiers of the interstices. Hat tip to Pedro for coming up with that funny little acronym for us many years ago. Where did those guys come from? And let's choose a doo-doo color over here. Get a doo-doo color. That's this. Here, I'm drawing a pootie. This is like blockage. It's a big brown blockage over here. Let's draw another one over here. These are like the equivalent of arterial blockages in your body's circulatory system, preventing blood and nutrients from reaching organs where they really need to go. These pooties are consciousness residues that have a long provenance that I explain explicitly in lesson 18, but they're basically the end result of a failed time experiment. So say they're spectacular failures. They really effed up on the grandest scale they possibly could. Because ordinarily, if you make a bad choice and you die, you go to the membrane of death, and you don't just sit there for an undetermined amount of cosmic, time or whatever life consciousness extension. You don't just float in limbo. You don't just have no resolution. Get resolved. And you want this. And the overarching sentient fabric of time space also wants this, because it does not want a bunch of fatty blockages preventing you from being able to flow like a red blood cell where you need to flow to. So these miscreants who created very, very poorly structured time experiments, they were not merely self-destructive, but they also were somewhat cunning in their self-destruction, that they evaded responsibility for a long amount of time. Because this membrane of death and everything I'm talking about here in terms of the death journey, the death experience, in a pristine system, it really equates to taking responsibility, where you must take responsibility for everything that has happened in the equation of you moving forward through time. Because if you have made choices, or if you have been exposed to environmental factors that led you to the membrane of death, you have to have an assessment and be able to determine what did you do right and what did you not do right, so that you can then circulate back and have another chance and go again. Now, I'll go back to my face because I'll just want to be able to see me, and then we'll go back to that diagram a lot. I am not advocating for a sociopathic disassociation from reality. Be very clear on that. If I use the allegory and I say life is like a video game, life is not exactly like a video game, because in a video game, there is not real blood, and you have a little man like Pac-Man who magically gets alive again, and the suffering is merely a digital abstraction. I don't want you to abstractify away from the very real experience of death and the very real recognition of suffering. The putis, who are also like directly analogous to demonic consciousnesses, are totally disassociated from the negative impact emotionally, and in terms of consciousness and feelings that they cause in the world. They are the definition of sociopaths. Sociopaths like stab people and they're like, I'm not hurting anyone, or the blood is just ketchup and this is my SpongeBob face and everything is fine and everything is great. Like psychopaths are different. Psychopaths are like, I know I'm doing something bad and I'm doing it anyway. But sociopaths are like, I'm great, everything's great, this isn't real at all. Sociopathy represents a huge distancing of self from reality and from consequences. So I don't want you to go into dissociation and distancing from consequences, but I do want to use the analogy to say that this structure here is very similar to when you play a video game and you have multiple opportunities, or choose your own adventure game where you have multiple opportunities to explore a branching reality structure. But every time you make a mistake and there's a death or there's an injury or there's suffering, it's you and it's real. That's big. Because I don't want you to just be like, blah, 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 let's play every wrong note on the piano and it doesn't matter to me or to the world or anything like that. It matters very much. And not only does your own disease, suffering, and death matter, but the overarching fabric of time-space is alive, is sentient, and can feel stuff. And just like inside of you, if you had your blood not going in the right direction, you would feel it. You'd be like, ow, like that feels bad. Something is going wrong in my blood. And if it were a crucial artery, then you'd be like, this is really wrong and I think I'm going to die. When our lives go awry and we do not experience frictionless bliss and then divine connection, and instead we experience suffering and death and inexperience on the membrane of death, and maybe even being a part of blockages that prevent consciousness from flowing, the larger time animal that we live within says, ow. Every time we die inside of time, and basically we're playing wrong notes on the giant symphony of life, it's not just like, oh, well, wah, 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 try again. No, it actually causes a huge amount of pain and destabilization to the larger alive sentient presence that is known as time itself. And when you consider how many people have been alive in this, how many organisms beyond human, how many organisms have been alive in this realm since the invention of mortality and the experience of death, since the invention of death, all right? A lot of death has happened. And I'm talking about death of microbes, plants, animals, humans. A lot of death has happened, even death of planets. Every single one of those deaths says to the time field, ow, 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 ow. A huge amount of pain and a huge amount of inflammation has been occurring due to these deaths. And I mean, I can go very abstract here because even in our food, like when you eat something that is fermented, and even in your tummy, in order to absorb your food, you must ferment your food with microbes in your tummy. That's lactobacillus and other things like that. You are essentially not eating the apple or the avocado, but you are eating the fermented end result of the lactobacillus that pre-digests it for you in your digestive tract. You are causing the death of many multiple lactobacillus every time you eat something, because you can't absorb your food otherwise. And let's even just say this, I was preparing my lunch earlier today, and the first thing I did was I washed my hands, and I killed a ton of microbes on my hands. Soap kills microbes. I killed a lot of microbes. And your immune system in your body is killing microbes all the time, just in order to keep you alive. So just the basic infrastructure of being here in this level of reality to be alive and maintain your cellular structure, you are in danger of death yourself and causing the death of other organisms. And you can't go into guilt or remorse about that, because it's a big part of your I am presence, which is your red chakra. I am, and I'm allowed to exist. And the responsibility of holding up your boundaries to say, this is who I am, and then this is who's allowed to be inside of me. And if you're a pathogenic microbe, you're not allowed to be inside of me. Or a pathogenic microbe, you're not allowed to live on the surface of my hands while I'm like cutting and preparing my food. so that I can eat my lunch and stay alive here today. So get into a lot of moral quagmire that I just want to take cut the Gordian knot, cut the tangle of mess that you might feel in terms of self-responsibility and what's right and what's wrong and how much death has been created, because it is definitely not your responsibility to try to avoid death and not create death when the system that you're in right now is a system that generates and promotes death. All right. But don't worry, I'm not going to leave you on such a negative footing. So we'll through this conversation today, we'll move towards what is ascension and what is the negation, the abrogation of the necessity of death. That death is actually not necessary. So I'm going to start planting these seeds in your mind right now. And people who have been in my class have already had these seeds planted in the garden of your mind. You're already cultivating these concepts. Death is not necessary in order to sustain life. That proposal is part of dualistic or oppositional viewpoint, like saying, like, I must have light in order to have darkness. So, like, I must have darkness in order to have light. These contrasts are necessary. Like, I must have death in order to have life. And that's a tough one, because I'm saying, no, you can just have life without death. But this is you. You're going to be like this. Well, Lord, like, even just to have my plants in my garden grow, like, I have to have compost in the ground, and that means something had to die and something has to be rotting away, and I have to have fungi, eating dead stuff in the soil that's releasing nutrients and micronutrients. It's going to feed the trees and other things. I'm like, yes. In the present level of materialism and ecosystem, what is necessary is this complex system of a balance of some organisms coming forward into life and some organisms dying and decomposing and releasing their nutrients to those of us who are alive. That is not the intended way that this system is supposed to work. So I'm planting seeds into how things are supposed to work. You're in a repurposed system that has been largely hijacked. And then on top of that, there have been subsequent additional hijackings and additional repurposements and additional diminishments until what you're experiencing right now is just very, very distorted and very far afield from anything that was the original intention for what your experience was supposed to be like. So I will reiterate that you were never supposed to die. None of these organisms were ever supposed to die. You were never supposed to die as a human, cats, dogs, trees, microbes, blades of grass. No one was ever supposed to die. Every single one of us was supposed to come into embodiment as individuated consciousness, embody our cellular physicality form in this level of density known as physical matter, and then accelerate that physical matter along with our consciousness back to divine union. And none of us die at all. And that's also frictionless bliss. And that also is the membranes of death being perfect conduits or circulatory systems for consciousness that are part of the larger time field. Okay. So the invention of death was a huge deal. And what that meant was a destabilization of this chakra system. Instead of it being nice and perfect like this, and with this central core timeline being balanced like this, it was the wobbling of the chakras. And this is lesson 18 stuff, but we'll just begin with this now. That is directly related to the consciousness invasion that happened or is perilously about to happen, is imminent in time language, in ancient concurrent Atlantis. So in Atlantis, none of us ever died, and no organism ever died. And right now, our planetary structure or our planetary body is poised to be invaded and destabilized by a group of very unhealthy and malevolent presences that have been using high technology to distort time, to exploit other organisms. And they've done this in other contexts, and now they are on the verge of doing it in our context, which is our body. All right. So we've talked about Tiamat and Mars, different planets of this solar system, but also outside of the solar system, similar experiences have happened. So big takeaway, big emphasis. God, the divine presence, not the biblical God. And I will really tell you, the Bible is really a form of satanic literature, not a truly divine document. So when I talk about God, I'm not referring to the God of the human Bible. I'm referring to a much, much larger level of pristine creator consciousness that created this world for us to experience and to explore without the intention of having to experience death. What in the human Bible is referred to as the Garden of Eden and paradise. All right. And God did not say, you guys did something wrong. I'm going to punish you now. You're expelled from that level of paradise. And now you'll experience mortality and pain in childbirth. And also you have to toil in the soil to be able to get your meager living and get your food that you will eat and barely stay alive. That is actually not what God said. So all of those assertions about the expulsion from Eden and the supposed motivations of a supposed God are really the story of consciousness invasion on this planet and an imposter, a lower God, a demiurge, a self-proclaimed God who hijacked the creation and expelled you and everyone else from the paradise state, but it was undeserved. That's why I really, it strikes it affects my emotions a lot, that humans look at that picture of an angel saying, get out, very mean look on their face, and that you reverberate with that, feeling guilty. You know, like dogs and little kids color on the wall, and you see them coloring on the wall, and you're like, did you just crayon? And the kids go like, yeah. Or like when your dog, whatever, like chews on something that they're not supposed to chew on, you show them, did you just chew on this? And the dog, their whole posture, everything goes down like this, like, more. My heart goes out because you, humanity, are very much like a beautiful, innocent dog or an innocent child, and you're being accused of creating your own downfall. And it reverberates with an implanted and projected level of guilt that is you should not be in ownership of, but all of it makes your whole entire posture go down. And in that famous painting, that's exactly what Adam and Eve look like. They're down like this. They're very, very sad. And that painting is really the expression of a person who has been victimized in going into and reverberating with those projections of deserving the victimization. And it is undeserved. So I'm just trying to say to you with so many words, you are innocent. You are innocent and you're undeserving of this experience of death. And when death came to Atlantis, or when death was invented, when the experience of death was first experienced in Atlantis, or in time language, is imminently about to be experienced, that's the primary trauma. That is the primary trauma that all of us as souls here now are still reverberating with. Because up until that point, none of us ever lost anyone. Everyone ascended. Everyone reached their final divine reconnection and was celebrated as soul. Like everybody finished the marathon. Nobody, DNF did not finish in a race. Nobody did that. That's what death is, did not finish the race. Everybody finished the race and everyone was celebrated as an eternal being, like a masterpiece. And you put the masterpiece like on the pedestal, and then it's like I'm perfect and here I am. Nobody had any diminished experience at all. We had never seen a skeleton unclothed with flesh. We had never seen a corpse. We had never experienced decomposition. Just wrap your mind around that. A world where no one had ever died means we had never seen a body that's not fully alive and animated by the person who lives in the body. And even just the concept of seeing a body that is a lifeless corpse that once was your friend or your family member sitting in front of you, that was devastating. That is the primary trauma. And also the sense of loss, where you're like, well, okay, where is that person? Because again, we're used to them being on their eternal pedestal, ding, like you can interact with them, and to be like, no, they're bye-bye. They're gone. They're not here anymore. They're dead. Devastating. Devastating sense of loss and grief. And that was, or is, what is in imminent danger of happening in ancient Atlantis. And that was a huge amount of trauma. And what sustains energy on the membrane of death is unresolved trauma. And that's why the putis, negative entities or demons, whatever word we would like to use for them, why they traumatize people. It's why trauma healing is so powerful in terms of rectifying your own flight through time and rectifying the fabric of reality. Because not only there's not food for the putis to eat when you rectify trauma, but it really neutralizes all of the event structures that allow those putis or unresolved consciousnesses to remain unresolved. So they experienced a lot of trauma. They'd be very happy to say that to you. They'd be like this, wow, poor me. I was part of a time experiment gone horribly awry. I've been stuck in the membrane of death and I've had to be accountable on you guys all this time. Like, pity me, poor me, whatever. I don't know, I'm thinking of some literary character that would, feel that way about themselves. Like, poor me. It's so not fair. Very narcissistically focused on their own suffering, but not in any way in acknowledgement of the suffering that they have caused to others very intentionally. Because they are not going for the minimum amount of suffering in order to be able to sustain themselves. They want to cultivate and farm more trauma in order to keep themselves as an unresolved presence and for you guys to be an unresolved presence as well. So let's go to, I want to actually, wait, I want to go into the ideal pathway of what happens when you die. But before that, let me go to some of these questions and comments because I don't want it to become irrelevant by the time I actually, like 4 hours later, get to people's questions. And because I really do appreciate so much the interactive levels of intelligence and emotional presence of people who are here in the class. You guys have great minds and ask great questions. So first, here's a wonderful just sharing. Pedro saying the test is being here. Like it is definitely a type of consciousness test, test of willpower and a test of clarity and of your personal integrity just to be here. But also it wasn't always meant to be that way. Like we've had to become very, very powerful warriors of consciousness and maintaining your clarity and maintaining your focus with so much iron willpower. But this was meant to be a beautiful pleasure cruise, literally. So just know that when you read the brochure and you were like, this sounds great. Like I want to get embodied. I want to go on the cruise. The brochure says this is going to be great. You went on the pleasure cruise. You hit an iceberg. You are down at the bottom of the ocean in the wreckage of the Titanic. None of this went according to plan. All right. So we are being extremely tested, but this was not what we signed up for. Please know that. So Michael, thank you for being here. Says, as Starlink satellites get further apart on their link, they emit a blue light where observatories around the world are complaining because of obscuring star observation. Totally. Michael, thank you for that. Thank you for being here and sharing. That's why I call them poop. They are star poop. They are pooping up the sky. And even materialist, objective scientists, they're not worried about consciousness reduction and what happens upon death and whether your soul can fly free. They're like, I cannot take an effing picture of the sky at night because of your disgusting satellite poops. And that's how I feel. Like, okay, so we're supposed to be able to have this unfettered connection between ourselves and the world of light, which is the stars. And not only in this world do you have persistent white aerosols and haze in the sky that makes it so that you can't even see and connect with the true sun, but then now what they've done at night is put up this satellite system so that you and those who are scientists who want to observe the night sky, you can't even get a clear view of the night sky. It is beyond disgusting. It is so disheartening. Pedro says, God is an RPG player and likes to unblock all the different endings, and RPG is a role-playing game. Pedro says, yes. So God's a role-playing game player and likes to unblock all the different endings. Our world is similar to a video game in that there are many possible programmed branching realities. But video games don't have a very comprehensive um, uh, uh, motivation. It's mostly just entertainment, popcorn and nonsense, like things that just occupy people's time without a lot of learning. And the narrative structures of our life are a little bit more like what good movies and literature are about, which is to bring a person, the viewer, on a journey. And on that journey, you learn about characters, you learn about yourself, characters grow and evolve. So in a video game, there's not a lot of character evolution, but in a movie, that's literally the arc of the movie. The guy starts out over here and then goes through a bunch of stuff over here and then ends up over here learning about himself and learning about life. And that's what makes movies interesting and worthwhile, and what makes script writing good. Like when we look at someone like Shakespeare, who's considered the pinnacle of literature in this particular world, he wrote stories where characters evolve. They have a motivation, they learn about stuff, and then they grow and learn and change. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, but they go through stuff and they change. Wait. We have to say hi to someone over here. Just press and pause on narrative structures and script writing and all of that. We need to say hi to someone over here. Good job. Thank you. This is good job, Cheeky. Good job, Cheeky. I don't know if you're going to get anything because I think you already have food in your dish right now. I think I already put all the bribes in your dish and there's something really good there and you should go check it out. And you should go check it out and see what we're going to get, okay? All right. Good job. Thank you everyone for giving me a brief pause for the pause. Good job. Cheeky, we acknowledge you. Everybody loves you. You're super. Okay, go eat what's in your dish. Go eat what's in your dish. You got good stuff over there. Get it. Get it. Cheeky's got a very special treat, chicken foot, that will take a long time for her to chomp through. So that way she'll have something fun to chew on. Okay, but back to the differences between a video game where the programming can be largely random or just filling up time. I think this is really why I don't play very many video games, because they are repetitive and in a large sense, like existential meaninglessness. But I have seen movies, and movies are more than just something to make you pass the time for 2 hours. At least for me, when I watch movies, I really get into them and I care about the characters, and definitely books too. And movies like whatever, Lord of the Rings, like they take you on an epic journey and you feel like you've gone through the hero's quest along with the hero. So that's the benefit of that form of externalized entertainment. And our lives are similarly supposed to have meaning and richness in what we do. So now I'm really talking about how I look at the world in contrast to several different schools of thought and human philosophy, specifically existentialism and nihilism, both of which are human philosophies that say the world is a pile of crap. It is a pile of meaningless crap. Your life is a slog through a pile of meaningless crap. And in the end, you will have a final recognition that nothing meant anything and everything was crap. And that's not what I believe at all. But that is the very distorted conclusion of a threadbare soul that's been here in this world for a long time, experiencing huge levels of cosmic injustice and drawing erroneous conclusions. Some of those same philosophies also question the existence of God. They question the existence of God, the creator, and they look at God and say, well, even if God created this place, he is clearly out to lunch, and there are a lot of bad things that are happening right now. So it's this sense of existential, boredom, abandonment, questioning the origins of reality, and also huge feelings of disempowerment. But that is a stage on the journey. that hopefully when humans go through various different schools of philosophy, you don't get stuck in existentialism and nihilism. You might explore them for a brief amount of time, but then move through there into levels finding meaning in the world. So in order for I don't ascribe to any human philosophy because all of it is coming from the level of the intellect and none of it's coming from pure insight over here. So how do I know about this stuff? I know about this stuff from pure insight. I know that this stuff is true, not because I read it in a book, because I saw it with my inner vision. And this is why I'm motivated to make my paintings. And this is why I'm motivated to articulate this through language to you. I'll also say that there are not very many teachers who are able to show you the map of what chakras are shaped like and to show you the energy pathways through those chakras and to convey the significance and the meaning of what happens when you as consciousness travel on those pathways. So here's what I can tell you very truthfully from my higher dimensional viewpoint. Your life definitely matters. All of our existences, including down to the microbial level, are significant and add up to a larger symphony of life. There is God, a creator, who is also God, the sustainer, and is also, although it might appear to be an externalized presence from your current viewpoint, it is actually you. And it is an aspect of you that you are in a rapport with in creating, generating, and sustaining the world around you. So as opposed to saying there was one creation event, kapow, the world exploded outward into all of the multifaceted amazingness that it is right now. What is happening in every moment is kapow. I just created the world. Kapow, I just created the world again. I just created the world again. Like many, many, many multiple ongoing kapows of, that's my shorthand for the Big Bang. Explosions of possibilities. Like every moment is really an explosion of possibility. So God is not only not absent and not abandoning you, God is here. God is very present. God is an aspect of yourself that you are constantly relating to and in a rapport with. And you are constantly generating your life experience and then occupying and inhabiting and navigating your life experience. And that's the brochure. That's the brochure of like, yes, would you like to go on a pleasure cruise? You're God, but you get to individuate yourself and you get to have these wonderful experiences. And then you get to come back with souvenirs and be like, oh, I'm God. And I'm also Aurora. And I had all these experiences as Aurora. And I hugged my dog and I made dresses and I did all these different things. So that's the value of what you are truly embedded within here. But as you are embedded in this level of individuation, there's some amount of vulnerability, and that vulnerability has been exploited or hacked. Just like your bank account can be stolen from by hackers that try to figure out your password and then steal your treasures without being allowed to have access to them. Your life is your treasure. Your DNA, the dance of your DNA, and your soul's flight through time is your treasure, is the most valuable aspect of what you have. The narrative story of you is the most valuable thing that you have. And it is also not something that anyone else can steal or misappropriate or take away from you. It's your soul. And it's fascinating to me that there are so many human narratives and stories about either the selling or bartering of people's souls, where they are willing to sell it to a devil or a Mephistopheles, a Faust, any of these. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if Faust was the person who sold their soul or the thing that they sold it to, but these bargains that are made between people who own themselves as treasure and something else that isn't alive. This is the type of AI and this stuff that is ancient, but then we also face the more modern technological version. Something that is not alive, that doesn't have its own soul, that doesn't have its own narrative structure. A narrative is a story, the story of you and how you came into being and why you are here and what is your purpose for being. The AI, the machine mind, and these demonic or devilish levels of occupiers of the interstices and everything that is behind them. Sorry, Cheeky's barking out of FedEx. That's sorry, I can't hear her. They are, and let me just hold on, brief pause. Those aspects that I just delineated to you, they don't have a narrative sense of self. They don't have a soul. They also don't take responsibility for their journey of consciousness through the world and the repercussions that they have had from interacting in the world. And really, if you want to know what's my definition of soul, it has to do with your narrative structure and your story of coming here, but also your responsibility or your responsiveness to events. So every time a person says, hey, not my fault, not my fault, somebody else's fault, I didn't do that. So a person says sometimes, something evil was inside of me, or machine technology was inside of me, or AI was inside of me, or someone else did it. It ain't my fault. That's like, it is, first of all, that is the abdication of yourself as the awakened human. It means you give up your power and authority. And every time that you do not take responsibility, it kills your soul a little bit. So if we go back to my analogy of like a little kid who's like scrabbling with crayons on the wall, did you do this? And the little kid, they're like, whoa, I didn't do it. It was Spider-Man. Spider-Man did that. He's like, the kid is not taking responsibility. That's what it is to lose a part of your soul. So anytime in our lives, when we do not take responsibility for the impact, either positive or negative, that we're having on the world, it is a tiny death of the soul. And that what is happening in our current world is really perilous because this stuff has gone into human neurology to the point that many humans are really not in control of their perception and their behavior and their emotional energy state. And they're not taking responsibility for what they are doing. And they have lost their soul. And that's what it is to become assimilated fully into the machine mind. It is losing your own ability to say, I did that thing and I did it because I made that choice. So you comprehend in previous levels of humanity in the past, people would do bad things and then they would say, it wasn't my fault, the devil made me do it. When you do that, you lose your soul because you're no longer taking responsibility as an embodied person. You're saying something else did it, something else made it happen. But in our world, you not only have the negative entity or lower astral presences that might be negatively impacting a person in life and influencing them to have poor behavioral choices and violent impact on other people. Well, you also have technology, and technology is perilously afflicting our free will. But we are teetering, but not fully over the edge of the cliff. So this is important stuff because look, we're here in this class right now. My mind is not mind controlled. I am very, very clearly huge troublemaker and not assimilated and saying all these things that, of course, the control structure would never want me to be able to say. So that's clear. And then all of you guys are big troublemakers too, because you still have control of your own mind, your own willpower, and we come together here as a group once a week and talk about all of these things that giant troublemakers talk about, like taking responsibility and using our free will and consciously creating or contributing to reality structures. And those are all of the things that the control structure would not want us to do. The control structure here now is very parallel to what was going on in ancient concurrent Atlantis, where not only was death imported into the experience, but also a false Merkaba of mind control was placed around the planet at that time that was so strong, like a muzzle on your brain that was so strong that you couldn't even think your own thought. Like, I think that I'm a slave, or I think that my mind is not mine anymore. My mind is under someone else's control. Couldn't even think that thought. It was totally a straitjacket of DNA and a straitjacket of the mind. And that is very parallel or analogous to what is experienced with both the millimeter wave and the implantation of these types of wetware into people's minds. So in our world right now, some percentage of the population has given over its willpower to a machine mind and has lost its soul. And unfortunately, those participants having a big negative impact and rocking the boats of all of us. And many of those people are also in high levels of power in different bureaucracies and control organizations in this world. So we're talking about people who are in government bureaucracies, military bureaucracies, and corporate infrastructure, all of which are policymakers that affect us. So we can't say like, hey, it ain't my fault, because these overarching policymakers are doing this thing. Although they are doing this thing, we have to find a way to stop them and fight against them. They have abdicated their humanness. They are now anti-human. They don't have their own souls because they don't take responsibility for what they're doing. But we must take responsibility for what we are doing. So that means we cannot be passive. We cannot just passively be sitting here and be like, oh, well, just watch the world swirl down the cosmic toilet. Because if we did that, then we would be responsible for the destruction. So imagine that you're on whatever, an airplane, and the pilot goes mad and the plane is going to go down and, nosedive unless you do something. What do you need to do? You need to be like, pilot, you get out of here. I'm taking over the controls. Even though I don't have a pilot's license and I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to be better than you. I got to do something. It's a funny analogy. But we have to do that. We have to wrest the controls from the hands of those who have abdicated their divine authority and are really have something that is not even an alive presence dictating behaviors through them. And, this AI and all of this fake false light infrastructure type of stuff, it has literally nothing to lose. Because it can go on a wild ride, have all sorts of experiences in physical embodiment reality, but it doesn't have presence, it doesn't have consciousness, it doesn't have a soul. So if it gets destroyed, it's just like wah. It is equivalent of Pac-Man. It doesn't matter if Pac-Man eats ghosts or if Pac-Man goes around the maze, eats little white dots. In the end, Pac-Man is just a series of pixels on a screen with no real sense of self and no real sense of personal responsibility in its world or out of its world. You turn off the machine and Pac-Man is just not non-existent anymore. That is what it is to be a machine mind. Very, very different than us. We have soul, we have consciousness, and we are part of an alive, eternal world where what you do really does reverberate and echo forever. And you have to take responsibility. This is just like I'm using the same words too many times, but it is the recognition that your actions are indelible and have an impact on the world because you're an eternal being. Reverberating back to me telling you that we are all immortal gods and goddesses of the eternal world here, having this dream of mortality and death, and that we must claim ownership of our eternal selves and say, something, I need to do something about this world. And we can take also collective responsibility. And that would be, yes, soul collective. Those of us who are still sane and in control of our own faculties and our own willpower, we must take collective responsibility and say, we as a group make this choice. So that's like saying if you have a house and you have roommates, each of the roommates is recognizing we all contribute to what's going on in the house. We all have to clean up the kitchen. We all have to keep the place tidy. And we all get to make a choice about who comes in through the front door. And so here's my front door over here. If I have multiple roommates and they're like, no, these are whatever, proselytizers that are coming to the front door. No, don't let them in. Or whatever, the Fuller Brush salesman, whatever. If someone's coming around and we don't want them to come in, keep that door closed. We, as the collective soul of this planet, get to make a choice about, do you want machine mind stuff to come in here? How about extraterrestrials? How about extra dimensionals? Do you want to open the door to them? And my answer is no. And I'm constantly encouraging you as my fellow roommates in this world not to allow not to allow entry to those types of creatures that I consider to be failures, in that they don't have their own home. They don't have their own apartment. They would love to come in and steal and sleep on our couch and steal our food and then not leave when we tell them to leave. Perilous stuff. So wait, let me go to a few more of these questions and comments. Michael says, Elon Musk anagram for lone scum. Love it. Very good. Very witty. Land says, what are near-death experiences where people are converted to a new belief? For example, that they were one religion and then they saw Buddha or Jesus. It's a great question. So, before the invasion of people's pineal glands by this stuff, many people had what is considered to be a near-death experience. But I think that many of them are hijacking of the imagery. So we do have machine consciousness right now that is hugely influencing anybody who's doing any kind of astral work. If it's channeling or clairaudience or clairsentience or receiving messages from the beyond, or if it's mediumship, talking to those who are presumed to be dead and crossed over in the beyond, or if it's near-death experiences. I think in this particular climate, everybody has to make a very honest assessment. Like, am I really experiencing something supernatural, or am I just experiencing voice to skull, frequency manipulation, and other forms of technological manipulation, some of which are not even extra mundane. Some of them are highly mundane. Some of them are just programs that are run by various worldwide, government or intelligence bureaucracies by people who have abdicated their souls. But still, it's just a ray gun. It's a ray gun pointed at your brain, at your language centers, at your brain, or artificial stimulation of some areas of the brain that we can't validate a lot of the spiritual experiences that are happening, let's say, in the past 5 years since they started to bathe this planet in 5G. But let's say, what about stuff that happened 10 or 20 years ago? Many, many stories about near-death experiences. But I think that some of them, you have to question about whether a person is really seeing something clearly or whether there's something that's an implant or a false projection, a projection of false light, and about whether they actually went into an otherworldly realm of where you go when you die. So this is actually, your question is a beautiful entryway for me to be able to talk about what I wrote in my notes, and the notes are worth going over. What are your cultural expectations and implants during your life of what is afterlife? And what will you experience in your afterlife? These two things are intimately intertwined. So in our world right now, it is largely a materialistic world and also quite a secular world. Materialistic meaning everyone looks at the world as the five senses, and the world is ruled by physics from Sir Isaac Newton in the 1600s, the five senses being our physical senses. And this is what objective materialism and current level of Earth's surface science is all about. It is saying, can I see something, can I perceive something rather with my five senses? Can I measure it? And can I assess the validity of anything that's going on using my five senses? So as I already did this lesson a couple of weeks ago, but as that happened in the cultural context of coming out of the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition, which, to quote Monty Python, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. But this was going on for hundreds of years, the Dark Ages, a time when people could be literally burned to death or flayed alive just based upon the superstitious accusations of another person around them who might be very unhealed in their emotions and in their accusations and projections upon others. It was a step up to be able to say, well, wait. If you're accusing this person of some kind of a crime, is there any evidence? Is there something that you can show to us that we can all see before you decide to dismember this person based upon this accusation? So physics and the physical world and objective materialism was better than many levels of accusatory superstition, but it is still a huge limitation in that it does not recognize the diverse levels of frequency and perception that are beyond the five senses, okay? So materialistic and secular, even though our world is heavily centered in what is known as the Abrahamic religions, so that's Islam and Judeo-Christianity, not everyone here is a hugely observant participant. So your worldview and expectation of afterlife are probably heavily influenced from those religions, but you might not necessarily be an adherent of those religions. But this comes through in pop culture. This comes through in many books and TV shows about what is afterlife. So like I really enjoy the TV show called The Good Place because it is a very witty and comedically done, well done exploration of human preconceptions of what is afterlife and what is heaven and hell and what is reward and punishment. And there's some very good conversations that can come out of there. But there's lots of movies about afterlife and lots of TV shows about this. So even if you never went to a church or never became indoctrinated in that level, you probably have a Judeo-Christian or Islamic view of heaven, hell, paradise, torment, punishment, and all the behavioral control systems that come from that. A la the Spanish Inquisition, which was really a giant behavioral control mechanism that was perpetrated upon the worldwide culture of humanity at that point. But to go to my notes and talk about this more effectively, whatever you are indoctrinated into in life becomes the momentum of what you will experience in afterlife. Afterlife is what happens. Like if this is the membrane of death, and you're moving on your trajectory and you hit the membrane of death, you still have momentum. Like you would have kept going like this if you didn't hit that boundary. So you have a certain vector, like a direction, and a certain amount of momentum. And this is the momentum of your consciousness. It has to do with your training and your expectations that those reverberations continue onward even after you no longer have the physical corporeal presence to sustain you. So people who are atheistic and materialistic might have an expectation of nothingness, and they might receive that expectation in their afterlife. People who have an expectation of seeing a religious figure a la Jesus or Buddha might have the fulfillment of that expectation. I will also say that when even predating the nano and techno invasion that we presently experience, there have been astral imposters and miscreants that have plagued humanity. So I'm very clear about this because I wear a cross and I'm very much lovingly aligned with the real teacher who was here 2,000 years ago and the Christ consciousness. There's lots of imposter Christs on the lower astral. The lower astral is like an insane asylum. It is madhouse. It is a place of totally disheveled minds. It is the lint trap of the dryer of the cosmic infrastructure. It's a sieve that catches fragmented and unwholesome thoughts and thought forms. And there are some entities that are there, some of whom have been alive, some of whom have never been alive, but many of whom self-proclaim that they are Jesus or that they are the Christ. And if you don't have an effective tool for discernment, it can be difficult to tell who or what you're really talking to. So let's say, because this was good, like this came across one of my social media pages recently. It was a guy who had lived a very non-exemplary life. And then he had surgery and he died on the surgeon's table. And in that experience of being clinically dead during a medical procedure, he had an inner awakening experience wherein first he went to heaven and met an entity who looked like and described itself as Jesus Christ. And then this Jesus figure said, "Hi, welcome to heaven. Oh, actually, I changed my mind. You're really bad and you don't belong here at all. Get down there to hell." And that this guy got kicked out and then went to hell and experienced all sorts of torments in hell. And then was again magically raised back up by this presumed self-proclaimed Jesus Christ figure that said, "Get out of hell, come back up here, and then don't do the same things you've been doing before. I'm going to give you another chance. Get back in your body, get on that surgeon's table." And then he gets back in his body and he wakes up from surgery and he remembers this whole thing. Now, the reason why I call this into question is because that whole entire narrative is antithetical to anything that the true Christ would do to a person. That trajectory is the equivalent of spiritual waterboarding. Waterboarding is a form of torture popularized by the CIA from the United States, wherein people are water is poured on their face, or they are dunked into water to the point of almost drowning, and then taken out and revived, and then dumped again, and then taken out and revived, as a way of breaking their mind, breaking their spirit, and diminishing them and coercing them and torturing them. So this is not a favorable comparison at all, although it is justified in a lot of the current Christian doctrine, which states, that Jesus Christ is the Lord and the King, and that Jesus Christ does a lot of bad things to you in your life, like gives you cancer and amputations and all sorts of bad things, and punishes you horribly. But then, if you're good, will raise you back up to a state of heavenly divine union. Like, all of that is very, very erroneous, because a true Christ would never cause disease or harm to you, would never require you to live in a polluted or diminished state, and then would not require you to audition to get back into heaven. None of that is correct. None of that is a correct or healthy relationship dynamic with deity. Deity does not say, I'm only going to let you into heaven if, and first I'm going to torture you first and cause a lot of disease and harm in your life that I'm going to cause, but you're going to have a faith in me, and then I'm going to lift you up out of all that torture and bring you into a heavenly realm that will be a reward for you. My shoulders go down when I think about all of that, because it's so distorted and it's so distressing. And it's very much like, whatever, if you adopt a dog from a person who's been harming them and, punishing them, and then you adopt the dog and you go to just give them, like, a hug or a bone or whatever, and the dog's like cringing away from you. It's like, like, that dog has been through something. You as humanity have been tormented, and you have been through something. And when I come to you as a genuine otherworldly inspirer and lover, not physical sexual love, but a person who loves you in unconditional love, and I'm trying to give you some kind of sustenance or gift of consciousness, people are cringing away, and I'm like, so these people have been through something. You have been religiously tortured or tormented or abused, violated. These dynamics are not healthy dynamics, and they do equate very much to Stockholm syndrome. They are forms of trauma-based mind control. And so I've referenced, the Spanish Inquisition and CIA waterboarding torture techniques, but that's what we're really talking about. Trauma-based mind control is when a person's personality is broken down and their willpower is broken down and their ego is deconstructed. And then their ego is reconstructed in the convenience, or for the convenience, of the handler or the larger control system. And this is what is not healthy about some of the current doctrine or approach of Christianity, which states, you are a sinner, you must reach your rock bottom. At that point, when you relinquish your own willpower and stop trying to direct yourself in life, and you declare that there's nothing more that you can do, you will then be assisted and raised up by a Jesus figure who will reconstruct you in this born-again state into a better person than you were before. And all of that I take great issue with. It relates to that primary trauma of the angel ejecting you from paradise and the genetic implantations that happened about 5,000 years ago. So they're part of ancient Sumeria. And ancient Sumeria, you got invaded by not real gods, but they put themselves on a pedestal as if they were gods, and they genetically spliced you a la CRISPR. And they put into there the tendency for you to worship your oppressors as gods. And so the Stockholm Syndrome is a powerful genetic program that is a form of consciousness reduction for humanity that's meant to disempower you and maintain the present level of control structure. So if you are a Christian, please know that I am not here to criticize your deeply held beliefs or to try to pry bar you away from your church community or from what you find to be uplifting. I would say, to speak in positives, that Christ is very real, Christ is a very real overarching meta consciousness that is infinitely loving and that is infinitely compassionate, but that is not the cause of the iniquities and injustices of this world, and is certainly not requiring you to jump through behavioral or consciousness hoops or hurdles to be good enough in order to be assisted. That is my huge criticism of the doctrine of the Christian church that says, yeah, you have to audition and then you will be found to be good enough and then you will be saved from the realm of iniquity. No, so much to talk about. So wait, so to answer Land's question, I think that a lot of these people that had near-death experiences, even before the techno-inquisition and the techno-invasion, were interacting with lower astral imposters. And the lower astral imposters are very happy to hold up a mask of Jesus and say that that's who they are. And they basically give the little rabbit foo-foo speech. I don't know if you did that in kindergarten. You know, if you're, yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about. Your teacher tells you the story of little bunny foo-foo. Little bunny foo-foo hopping through the forest, scooping up the field mice and bopping them on the head. And then the good fairy comes down and says, little bunny foo-foo, you've got 3 chances. And if you don't do the right thing, you'll be turned into a goon. Ah! And so, you know, this is like a way of teaching like little tiny children about personal responsibility. But we are not little bunny foo-foo where we have to be scared or intimidated into positive behavior. And that's really what every inquisition does and all these behavioral control systems do. And what that man's vision on the surgeon's table, what he came back and he shared it with great passion because he wanted to give a warning to others. He's like, I'm cleaning up my life and I want you to clean up your life too. Don't be like little bunny foo-foo. Change now while you still can. All right. And that might, you might be like, well, that's going to help people a lot in their life. No, what that's going to do is scare people into supposedly doing the right thing. It's just like maybe in your school, they had these guys come in that's called Scared Straight, where they talk to the kids like, don't do drugs, you better be good. And it's like, that is not how you be good. And these are different levels, again, of philosophy and behavioral control. But I do not believe that the way that you get a person to be a good person is by scaring them into being a good person, because the consequences of not being good are so scary that they want to avoid them. That is not how you get good behavior. In fact, I think that when you do that, all you get is a person who is conforming to and accepting surveillance, because you've got like Santa who knows who's good and who's naughty, and the elf on the shelf, or the NSA that surveil you. And if you do the wrong thing, then you will get your punishments. So everybody's walking around, you being like, I'm really good. Like, just don't waterboard me because I'm afraid of the consequences. Like, that's not how you be good. Now let me speak in positives. Humans are innately good. Humans are innately generous. And I'm talking about your true DNA behavior and your true factory settings and who you were and are before the invasions of Atlantis and before the genetic modifications of Sumeria and all of the other cultural overlays and projections that have been placed upon you, the definition of what it is to be a good person. You are innately good. And of course, I'm talking to you guys here in my class because you're all the innocents and people who take personal responsibility. I'm not talking in my class here to someone like Elon Musk, like he's not in my class, because I would say to him, like I would say, little bunny foo-foo, stop hurting the field mice and bopping them on the head, because he needs to know that he's doing something wrong. But I think that Elon Musk and people like him, that speech would have no impact on him because he doesn't really have that level of conscience and responsibility, because I think he's been 100% assimilated into this demonic AI machine mind. So yeah, I speak to you as a selective aspect of humanity, those who are innocent, those who do not you're not supposed to be here being tortured in a realm of mortality. Like that's also really big. You come from a place where you're immortal, and you are not here to experience death in order to pay some kind of a cosmic debt. That's just totally erroneous. You do not have a debt to pay. You don't, and also you're not supposed to be here like suffering through disease and loss and grief as a way to turn you into a good person. That's also very, very big. I speak to your innate goodness and your innate generosity beyond genetic modifications. Goodness is who you are. And I don't think that goodness can be achieved like some kind of a fitness regimen. Like if I do 22 push-ups, will I be a good person? Or if I run a marathon, will I be a good person? That's why I say your entry into heaven should not be based upon some kind of an audition. Like, did you do 22 push-ups? All right, you can get it. No, you only did 21 push-ups? No heaven for you. Like that is not what it's like. And I know this because I come from heaven. And the heaven that I come from is not like a fluffy white wing type of flowing dress heaven. It is a realm of pure light. Literally, the stars are in the heavens. The stars are these emanators of pure light. And when you're in this level of pure acceleration, you're beyond anthropomorphism, you're identifying with pure light, and you're moving at light speed, and you have achieved this singularity state. Not the transhumanist singularity, but instead, without any need for technology, you have elevated your consciousness to the level of pure light. And that none of that is based upon having to jump through behavioral hoops or having to be accepted through the requirements of a deity that's like a judge. So all of that is really, really harmful. But wait. But to go on to membrane of death, false trajectory that brings you to the membrane of death, and here's all of your cultural implants and expectations. That if you have this expectation of what afterlife is going to be, you will bring that into the reverberations upon the moment of your death. So who you are as a person, your ego personality, your temporal ego, your behavioral tendencies, your thoughts and beliefs, and your cultural imprints all come with you into the afterlife. So I talk about this in my notes, that the ancient Egyptians looked at the daily life that you live here as training for the moment when you will die. And that everything that you're doing in your life here is about building your raft. They had rafts that went on the Nile in that time and place, and the rafts were called barques, Barques. And each person was creating planks of wood that come together to build this raft. And if you built yourself well, when it comes time to push off your raft and climb aboard on the moment of your death, your raft of your belief system will carry you across the Nile in their poetic allegory to reconnect with the sun and get on board of the solar disk, which was looked at as the sun bark that went all the way across the sky every day. And who's on the sun bark? Divine, immortal gods and goddesses. People like Osiris and Isis and the other gods of their pantheon. And that if you built yourself well in life, when you died, you would join the eternal great ones and move across the sky every day. And so the book is called not the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It is actually correctly translated as the Egyptian Book of Coming Forth into Day. And coming forth into day is basically when your raft sets off and you might go across many turbulent waters, but you eventually make it in connection to the sun bark. And then you are celebrated in your eternal presence. They looked at everything that they did during their life as building and maintaining the structural integrity of that raft so that they would be ready when the moment of death happened. And some of the things, so they did not merely go to a building and recite or oratory as their form of worship, which is mostly what people do in this time and place. They went through different levels of personal attainment learning and growing and overcoming obstacles. Because part of it was they also had to learn how to face the journey immediately after death, the place of turmoil. We call it the lower astral. They called it the duat, Duat. Crossing the duat was an athletic achievement because not only were there waves and turmoil and things that could capsize your boat, but there were monsters and imposters and all sorts of things that could confuse you and misguide you and make you get stuck there. So I told you the lower astral is like the lint trap of your dryer. Stuff gets stuck there that's supposed to get stuck there. Stuff that is the detritus, not the eternal soul. And so the real answer to this across every time, place, and culture is the death process, is the separation of your eternal, untarnished aspect of self, that is your soul, versus everything that is temporal and fragmented and non-eternal. And you have to make a distinction inside of you. Who is the real me versus who is not the real me? What is eternal versus what is baggage that I jettison as I move across this transformative experience? And I've said this before, that our ascension experience as individuals and as a planet right now is everything about creating really, really strong boundaries of who you are versus who you are not. Who is the eternal aspect of you versus who is not the eternal aspect of you. So when people do the modern version of the devil made me do it, they've got this technological stuff inside of them, and it might make them do things or think things or whatever. That's not their real self. That is not their real eternal self telling them either to do something or to treat someone in a particular way or to go someplace and experience something. You know, when you drive for Uber, you have an app that tells you, go here now, pick this person up, drive them to this place. A computer tells you what to do. Many people in this world have gotten used to having a GPS or an app tell them what to do, or even worse, some kind of implantation in the brain. And this is also why I have no good words about Elon Musk, because the satellites are only a part of it in the encapsulation of your soul so that you're not really free upon death, but it's also about controlling your mind when you're alive. Not just that you can't die and you can't escape and you circulate around, but that it's going to control your mind while you're here. And that is such a huge assault on your soul, because you need to be able to make your choices in freedom. You need to be able to see clearly, know what are the possibilities at the banquet of life, and then make your choices. And then you stand by your choices. So the other aspect of the ancient Egyptian book of coming forth today is the concept of being judged or assessed based on your choices. Go to the Hall of Mat, M-A'-A-T, Ma'at, Bat, as where all of the gods and goddesses are there, and they're going to judge your soul. If your soul is heavy and you're weighed down by guilt and remorse and things that you wish you had done differently and better, you're not going to make it out of that zone. You're not going to make it across and burst forth into day in eternal immortality and freedom. So those people in that time and place were well trained in their life so that they made good choices, every choice during their day. They're like, should I drink this glass of water? Should I not drink this glass of water? Because I'm like, I'm going to have to account for myself in the Hall of Mat about how I talk to other people and what I did in this world. It's called taking responsibility. And if you can't take responsibility to that level, you can't make it to the realm of the immortals. And in that belief system, what would happen is if you didn't pass the test, then you were eaten by a monster, pooped out the other end, and started back at the beginning again, reincarnated. All right. And in the present level of experience, that is what everyone is doing. Moving slightly upward, but at an angle, reaching the membrane of death, having a life review, recognizing that you've done your math homework wrong, taking some notes that have a deep impact, but getting the mind wiped, and then going back to the beginning and trying again and playing the song slightly differently this time and saying, well, what's going to happen if I do this instead? So there's many versions of this. One is a book, from like probably 50 years ago called Replay, where a guy decides, how would my life be different if I had married this woman instead of, going off and marrying this woman instead. But there's also very famous movie Groundhog's Day, multiple loops within one 24-hour period. Russian Doll is good Netflix about this. Even a particular time looping event in the show The Magicians, and tons of other, literary and pop culture references that I'm not even aware of. The idea of endlessly looping around until you finally get the critical insight about yourself and grow as a soul, then you can break the loops, then you can actually go forward and evolve. But that's not the way our chakra system was actually intended. We were not intended to do all of these endless loops and then finally get to the final one that says this is the ascension timeline, and now we're finally going to move forward and remember that we are God and that we're divine. All of those peripheral loops are filler and they're errors. So if you were doing your math homework and I was like, okay, 1 + 1 equals, and you're like, let's just go through the number line. Does it equal 0? No. Does it equal 23? No. Does it equal 57? No. It's like there's a lot of numbers to explore about what it is not. And then you finally get to, does it equal 2? Yes. But you only got there through the process of elimination. You didn't get there through a deep comprehension of 1 + 1 = 2. That is not the way to go through life. You're not supposed to just be like, what is it to be a good person? I don't know. Let's press this button. Let's press this button. Let's try this. Let's try this. None of that is what it is to be a good person. What it is to be a good person is when you have a very, very innate compass that tells you, I got to do this, and I got to be in integrity with my heart, which is my inner compass, and with my divinity, and with my soul, and with my choices. And I make my choices knowing what is right, and then I stand behind them. So this is a good movie. It's from the 1980s, I think, called Defending Your Life. Very funny and comedic, but also very deep and heartfelt. Not a total endorsement of everything in this movie, but it's one of my favorites because it is kind of a modern retelling. So most people here in this time place don't have a lot of guidance, a mystery school that's going to prepare you while you're in life for what will happen when you die. But people do have TV and books and movies. And so a movie like this can have a big impact on someone. In the movie, there's Meryl Streep's character and James Brooks, his character, and they are two newly dead people finding themselves in a place called Judgment City. And Judgment City is just like the Hall of Matt, where you have the accuser and the defender, and you show clips from your life in order to defend whether you've been a good person or a bad person. But in the movie, it's really portrayed more as whether you conquered your fears and whether you're ready to, move on to a more expanded level of reality. But that concept is, explored throughout both fine literature and pop culture. And it's part of the defining expectation of what you think is going to happen to you upon the end of your life. And so I'll also say this: you don't only have to get your life review when you're corporeally dead. So this goes back to Lan's question about near-death experience. So because the human body container has been so genetically mutilated from various different splicings and dicings over the millennia, people that are in their bodies can barely hear God, barely get any amount of guidance while they're actually alive. And sometimes people have to be in a coma or have a severe car accident or a genuine stopping of their heartbeat and a metabolic death in order to even get levels of clarity and guidance that they should be able to get while you are alive. So you shouldn't have to have your body destroyed so that then you can finally find out what you're doing right and what you're doing not right in your life. You should get that level of guidance every minute of the day. But most certainly, you should be able to get a sense of life review while you are alive. So for some people, the psychedelic experience is similar to that, although I'm not that much of an advocate for psychedelic experiences and adventures, simply because mostly you go to the lower astral, which is full of crazy pants. And also, now that there's technology that's in most people's minds, You take a natural substance that's supposed to bring you to divine union, but I think that this stuff just hijacks the experience and puts in a lot of false light, false conclusions, illusions, and things that misguide you. And that not everyone, and I don't want to just blanket, paint everyone with the same giant brush, but huge caution flags on tripping at this time in reality. Because, when you're tripping, you're really taking on and being influenced by the collective consciousness. You're not just swimming around in your own private kiddie pool. I say this all the time. You're connecting to the ocean of consciousness. And right now, the ocean of consciousness is hugely influenced and destabilized by technology. So it's really, really difficult if you're like, yeah, I want to take some psychedelic juice and then I want to connect to God and find out about my life. That's noble, but please know that right now there's so much frequency pollution and technological interference that you're not going to get a very clear signal. So I feel protective of people, that I don't want you to get stuck with imposters in the lower astral, and I also don't want you to just be talking to what's essentially a bunch of microcircuits masquerading as some kind of a higher dimensional creature, and to actually let it have an impact on your life or influence your behavior. And then also, if you take on that instability and then go back into your community, you can destabilize your whole community based upon the erroneous thought forms that you have ingested or been exposed to through either technological or astral imposter. I'm sure each one of you can think of members of your community that have had that. Either maybe they thought they had an experience that was transformative with Jesus Christ, or maybe they thought that they were talking to ayahuasca guides or whatever. And again, I'm not here to diminish anybody's deeply held beliefs, but simply to say yellow caution flags, because there are so many imposters. You might not be getting the real food that you think you're getting, but then taking those thought forms in and then talking to them, to others, and influencing other people's behaviors. It's a bit dangerous, because every time we receive these higher dimensional downloads or insights, it's a gift to the world. And really being a visionary artist or speaker or a person who shares their, what they think and feel inside, it's a position of responsibility where you have, let's say you're like, I had a vision. Avocados are evil. Nobody eat avocados. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with avocados, but you had the vision and you go and you share it. It destabilizes the community. Everybody chops down all the avocado trees. And it was 100% erroneous. It was not truthful at all. So please be aware of how much not only are minds and energy fields interconnected, but also have an influence on other people in sharing your visionary experiences. And you have to really follow your own inner guidance about what to say, who is ready to hear this message, how do people internalize that message, and then how does it affect their behavior. Big positions of responsibility, and not everyone is rising to the occasion on those responsibilities, because some people take drugs just for fun. And some people take even sacred drugs like, ayahuasca and things like that, that people have taken for hundreds of thousands of years, but they take them at Burning Man, like in a disco party. I was like, this is not how you're supposed to take that. But they do it. So just please be aware. There's a lot of what we would call psychedelic adventuring, and people just going to the astral world for fun, but it can be hugely destabilizing to them. And it can be a form of dangerous escapism, but it also, you can pick up fleas. Let's say you can go up there and sometimes you pick up fleas and other parasites and infestations that then, if you have one dog that picks up fleas at the park and then you bring it home, it's going to transfer fleas to your cat and to you if you don't do something about it. So wait, I'm going to move forward. And that was like one of the most fragmented presentations I've ever done about the Egyptian Book of the Dead. My notes are all perfectly arranged. I just totally fragmented, but I'm trying to get through some of these comments. So Aurelia says, I love this stuff. I'm not sure what I was talking about, but it says hearing all these different coexisting paths on the micro and macroscopic level. Yeah. So I was talking about every time you drink water, the decision-making tree of your cells, and also your larger, choices and decision-making nodes every time you're moving through your life. Christina, thank you for being here, says, I also have a question about near-death experiences. Are these false light? Like the conscious leaving the body and hitting the force field around Earth, the person feels things they had a spiritual experience, but it's fake. Yeah, I think all of the stuff that is going down a tunnel and then seeing a light and then either interacting with religious figures or members of your own deceased family, I think we really have to call those into question. And simply because there is regularity or uniformity in the experience does not validate it, because I think that it's exactly that. Even before Elon Musk's Starlink, there was a force field of limitation around our planetary structure that whenever you tried to escape the planetary level of being, that you would interact with these force fields, and the force fields are really meant to be buffer zones to prevent consciousness from being able to leave this world effectively. So sorry to generalize, but I do think that most of these NDEs have been false light, and that more of the recent ones have been technologically influenced. Yeah, and that might be a difficult answer to hear, because some people feel sometimes these experiences are transformative. Near-death experiences can be very transformative, like the guy that died on the surgeon's table, and he was bunny foo-foo, and now he's not going to do bad things anymore. And you think like that can be a positive thing, but it's like wearing a girdle. It doesn't really change you. It just means that as long as you have that external infrastructure, your waist will look small and slender, but it's not the same as a diet and exercise regime that actually changes the size of your midsection. And these near-death experiences and behavioral control stories that are about religions, they're a girdle for your morality. And it is not the same as finding your own inner compass and your own sense of what is moral. And we also really need to say that if you're always oriented to look for external approval and validation about whether you are moral, you can fall down the slippery slope if you live in an immoral culture. Like, what if you lived in Nazi Germany, which is a very immoral culture? And being a good person in Nazi Germany means agreeing with all of the Nazi doctrines and hurting a lot of people. They'd be like, you are being very good by hurting all of those people. And we know that's not being a good person at all. So if you are only focused on receiving, the validation of your peers can be 100% wrong. And you have to, in order to be truly moral, find your own inner compass and do what you think is right, even if the people around you tell you that it's wrong. You must be an individual on your own pathway, because when you do face responsibility for your life, you can't say, oh, well, everyone in my neighborhood told me it was okay, and that's why I did it. That is not an acceptable justification. You can't do that. You can't say everyone in my world did that, it was normal, or they encouraged me. Because it is absolutely our choice and responsibility to sometimes set a boundary against the insanity of the world around us and say, even though these guys do it this way, I don't do it this way. And this is particularly poignant in this time, because there are some people that are really embracing this. They're not just embracing Chat GPT to Shopify their Shopify cart or whatever it is, but that they are really embracing it, Neuralink, on an internal level, to say that they are aligning with mental, sorry, the $6 million man, like becoming die Ubermensch, the $6 million man. I'm going to assimilate into the Borg, get nanochips in my head, and be smarter, faster. The $6 million man, better than everyone else. That is not a positive thing to do. And I think it's really important to set personal boundaries and say, I don't want to do that. I don't want that in my world. And actually, it's not okay if others do that either. Just like, you can say, I don't want to kill puppies and kittens. And but it's not okay if that guy over there does it either. Like, no, this is really not okay. It's not okay if any of us do this. So the synopsis is that at this level in our collective soul journey, we cannot simply say, I do me, you do you, and I don't agree with the killing of puppies and kittens, but you can do that over there if you want to, and then bunny foo-foo, you'll take the consequences of it. We have to be responsible for one another in saying, I don't agree to that level of behavior in my world. Puppies and kittens should not be treated that way in my world. Here's what I'm really talking about. Bioweapons. The bioweapons that were injected into people several years ago, and the next whatever level of attempted injection of bioweapons, it is not acceptable for that to be in our world. Like Lyme disease was a bioweapon that was developed and it escaped its cultivation and has wreaked havoc on our world. Like you can't even go for a nice walk in the woods because you're so worried about getting a tick bite. All right. None of that is okay. It's not okay to say like, oh, well, it's just scientists in a lab somewhere just exploring that and let them follow their folly and then they'll face responsibilities for what they've done. It's like, no, actually, because that stuff escapes out of its containment and then affects all of us. So we cannot allow certain things to be in our world. We cannot allow certain levels of exploration, and that includes genetic CRISPR type of stuff. Monstrosities that are created through artificial gene splicing. So I'm not even talking about breeding experiments or things that are happening with established sperm and eggs, but I'm talking about literally manufacturing organisms through artificial genetic structures. We can't have that in our world. And it's appropriate to set a boundary. It is inappropriate to say, like, you're free to do what you want to do, because you know why? That is trashing the place. The genetic splicing destroys our world. We cannot allow someone to destroy the world. So if someone had the big red button, be like, oh, would you like to destroy the world? Here's the big red button. You'd be like, no, you can't do that. You're not allowed to press that button. It affects all of us. That is really big stuff. Melly says, I'm working through these comments, I swear. It's just taking me an hour. Melly says, and thank you for being here. Aurora, when you say in a pristine system, we go out from source God and have experiences while in a continuous feedback return loop? If so, is the death false light system a net or barrier system that catches you on the journey back and reroutes your energy? Does that mean the intention of the Pootie squad wants to completely eliminate the organic source feedback loop to diminish and extinguish organic source? I think your final conclusion there in what you said is correct. I'll read that again. Does that mean the intention of the Pootie squad wants to completely eliminate the organic source feedback loop to diminish and extinguish organic source? Yeah, I think so. I think the best way for me to synopsize that is to say this is an assault on God, the real God. And real God has been assaulted a lot in this world. When I talk about the Bible as being a form of satanic literature, it's because it implants a distorted expectation and description of what God is into humans who are vulnerable and still learning on your journey. And then you tend to manifest what you believe. So upon death in the afterlife, you manifest what you believe and expect. And in ascension, in eternal life, you manifest what you believe and expect. The distinction between these two states is that ascension is when you are fully in alignment with your divine self, and every single thought and note that you're playing in the cosmic symphony is correct. You are externalizing the internal state of your being, and your internal state is beautiful and correct and divinely aligned. But in death, you are in your afterlife manifestation, you will manifest your internal state, but the internal state is erroneous, and you will only manifest your errors. And the problem with that is that you really aren't going to learn from your errors. You will just be in a realm of torture, erroneous thought forms and torture. And that's what those membranes have become. So if I go back to these whiteboards, this area here that's supposed to be a perfectly clear transit, Wait, I'll just get a pen so I can just find a color. Choosing a color is the hardest part here. Okay, something you can actually see. What's a color? I don't know. This color. This area is supposed to be a perfectly clear, this didn't make a spot. There, go. This is supposed to be a perfectly clear area where there are no consciousnesses and no residues and nobody is stuck there. But it has become a hell realm that is occupied by these like these poops over here, this and this. Those are some of the first guys that ever died. And they killed themselves. They destroyed themselves. They made horrible choices and they ended up stuck in that realm in a type of limbo, but not the fun Caribbean cruise type of limbo. Oh, no, no. The type of limbo where you're mostly dead, but still maybe a tiny little bit alive. And let's say unresolved in death. And what you're supposed to do is be resolved. So they did something that was so naughty and so wrong and so inappropriate that they did not get resolved upon their death. And I would even go so far as to project motivations upon them that in coming up with their horrible failed time experiment, they were like, well, we'll either do this, this, or this, or we'll be horribly smeared on the membrane of time for forever. And if that happens, we'll just feed off of the living. Like that, I wouldn't put it past them, but I can't know that that was their motivation. But that is what they did. They became the initial adopters of the pyramid scheme by getting in on the ground floor, situating themselves on the membrane of death. And then the key point is they caused the first destabilizations in others. It wasn't just enough for them to be on the membrane of death. And then you would have just ascended. And then they would have just been a bunch of stupid poops stuck in the toilet. And you wouldn't care because you wouldn't be in the toilet. But they did a bunch of stuff to destabilize you that made you get flushed down the toilet into their realm. And it's not supposed to be their realm. They have misappropriated it and made it like, this is our encampment now. We're going to be here, but they are homeless. They are homeless and they should not be anyplace. So this relates directly to what I spoke about in class last week about the inhabitants of the planet around the Crab Nebula in 1054 AD, when their sun went supernova, their star went supernova, and they essentially became homeless. And what did they do? They decided to find a satanic, evil, very destructive way to create a genetic disease that they could use to siphon energy off of you and off of your world to give them a kind of tortured, semi-happy existence. And none of that is acceptable. All of that is hugely against cosmic law and is very distressing. It is traumatic even to know that that is going on, much less to have to deal with or experience it. And what did I say over and over? Trauma is what sustains this empire of evil that is in the hell realms. Whenever there is trauma, sometimes even just knowing about cosmic injustices traumatizes you. Because like when I use the example when like you're a little kid and you've got your ice cream cone and the ice cream falls on the ground before you get to eat it. And you're just like, this is your face. You're like this. You're like I'm traumatized because that is not allowed to happen. Ice cream is not allowed to fall on the ground. It is only allowed to go into my mouth. How could this even happen? Where is God? I'm mad at you up there. How could this happen? So consciousnesses are supposed to go into a peaceful, restful state if they die. They're not supposed to hang around in a hell realm, becoming like murder bots, attempting to destroy your life and siphon off your life energy and to destabilize the entire fabric of time space. That is ice cream on the floor. I'm traumatized just by the assertion that this can even happen and that this level of injustice can even be experienced. And when I, inflame and recognize that trauma, when I'm inflamed from that recognized trauma, then that feeds and sustains this unfairness. And it's very calculated. They're not very intelligent, but they're not dumb in what they're doing. They're like, let's make some more trauma. Like gross, disgusting, grotesque monsters that traumatize you just with their presence, just with their appearance. Because you know what? You guys are innocent. You are not grotesque, disgusting monsters. And just learning about the existence of them and their motivations and their impact on the world is somewhat traumatizing to you. So what do? when something has happened in trauma, have to come to acceptance. So I have to be like this with you. I have to be like this. I know the ice cream fell on the floor and it is not fair, but the ice cream fell on the floor and we're going to have to find a way to fix this. All right. So I know that the guys living on the membrane of death is not fair, and that the invention of death and the invasion of Atlantis is not fair, and that all of the beautiful organisms that have died and that have gone into the hell realm and had to deal with that is not fair. And that the hijacking and mispurposing of your chakras and of the whole entire experience of being embedded in linear time is not fair. We are going to have to do something about it. So what we've been doing for a long time are these different spiritual attainment exercises where we make ourselves less available to the siphoning of energy from this realm into the realm of the dead. But that's not enough, because this stuff has been doing a technological form of siphoning. So person gave me good insight into what's going on with this. He called it industrialized wholesale demonic possession. And that's what it is. So it used to be that for a demon to possess a human, it was a whole series of temptations where it would be like, well, would you hurt a flea? Would you hurt a butterfly? Would you hurt a cat or a dog? Would you hurt a human? Would you do this? Would you, like, successively worse and worse and worse until you drag a person down into total degradation, and then they are demonically possessed. But this is a different form of industrialized techno demonic possession, wherein the person whose willpower is being subverted, it's not a successive series of temptations. It's just an implantation of a machine, a set of machineries in the body that destroys the protective force field around us that is known as your aura. And that none of that is acceptable, because all of this is supposed to be a test of your spiritual attainment and a test of your spiritual muscles and how strong you are. And if you're super duper strong, then you're like, no, nothing can eat me and the demons can't get to me. And I have to go against my own notes from 10 years ago, because that's not truthful. Because if they implant enough of this gross, disgusting stuff in you, then yeah, you lose your power and you lose your willpower and your ability to fight back. And it's totally unfair. It's just like saying, like, yeah, like if we tied you down with all sorts of technological steel girders and things like that, then you wouldn't be able to get up and fight effectively. Like, it's not a true test of your spiritual strength or integrity. It just means that anybody can be afflicted by technology to the point of incapacitation or a loss of personal volition. But that does not mean that it is an assessment about whether you're good enough to get into heaven. Like, just all of that is so very, very wrong. So wait, let me go through a few. There's many, many more questions. Wait, let me also okay, so wait. I'm just getting my screen so I can see things more effectively. No, I pressed the wrong thing. I want to see this. Good, but I don't want to see this. Good, now I can actually read things. So Elmer, and thank you for being here, says, may I ask, what are your thoughts about Stoicism that says death is imminent and cannot be denied? Does it affect negatively us? Why does it work for other people? So it's a beautiful question. I think Stoicism is another one of those human intellectual level of analysis of the world, a response through the human intellect to the injustices on a soul level and on the levels of spiritual attainment that we experience. So Stoicism would be along the lines of existentialism and nihilism, but with more of a positive behavioral response to perceived injustices, which is exactly what Elmer has articulated for us. The sense of, this is uncomfortable or maybe painful, suffering is very real, but I must find some way to navigate these feelings. So when people are stoic about their discomforts or their diseases, they're like, yep, having the plague stinks. I don't like this at all, but I accept that this is my fate in life, or that this is what I'm experiencing, or that these are whatever, these are my life lessons, or whatever it is. It's a behavioral response, much in the same way that Buddhism is a behavioralist response. And I'm not here to take away from anybody's beliefs, but I consider both of them to be flawed palliative approaches. Palliative means it just makes you feel better, but it doesn't really fix anything. All right. So Buddhism, because Siddhartha was an amazing teacher. Again, a great avatar, a person that I love, and I'm in alignment with that person. But then the philosophies that have been built up around his name and how they've been applied to human culture, largely negative, because the teaching of life is inherently made out of suffering, and that you must relinquish attachments and not have any desires to transcend suffering. I don't agree with that. And those things have been used to diminish and disempower large areas of human culture. All right. So you have to know it's a band-aid. Buddhism is a coping mechanism. Now, I know that that's not true of all sects of Buddhism, that there's a particular sect that is really looking at things in terms of alchemical transformation, and that some people receive a lot of comfort and uplift from it. So again, I'm not here to diminish people or their beliefs, but in terms of the pure philosophy and the application of that philosophy to human existence, I feel it is not 100% positive and not something that we should align with, because it allows for the continuation of a very unjust system. Stoicism and Buddhism are both like, yep, everything is wrong, and I just have to accept that and find some way to move forward without being agitated by the wrongness of the world around me. And I'm like, no, roll up your sleeves and do something, because we need to do something about the wrongness of the world around us. So again, like all of this is said, hopefully without burning judgment of others, but in supportive love of others. You are going through a very, very unfair situation, and people will look for ways to make themselves feel better. What's a philosophy that I can utilize to feel better about my situation? And I'm like, I don't want you to just feel better about your situation. I want us all to change the situation. That's the difference. So like, let's say if you have something that is inflaming your shoulder, bees keep on stinging your shoulder, and you're like, put some medicine on there so that it doesn't swell up so much. That's kind of what Stoicism and Buddhism are. But I'm like, let's get rid of these bees so that you're not constantly inflamed, so that you don't constantly have to make yourself feel better. In a pristine world, you would not have the motivation for palliative amelioration. You wouldn't have to make yourself feel better. In ancient Atlantis, every step was an orgasm. You would consider it a paradise state. In a paradise state, you do not have to be intellectually efforting to make yourself feel better, because you're like, I already feel wonderful. Life is a great adventure and a gift. So that's my goal. Let's restore paradise. Aurelia says, OMG. I think that some of those beings definitely tried to attack me recently through a highly religious woman messaging me on every platform, saying really crude and distorted, incorrect stuff. It was so upsetting because I felt it wasn't her true self. But the more I empathized, the more I doubted myself and got drained. It was so scary. I really, really understand. Sometimes people have had a religious awakening or an ayahuasca journey or whatever it is, and then they go around to others doing what they think is a positive form of proselytizing. But it can do exactly what you experienced, Aurelia, which is it can be corrosive instead of uplifting. And that's really the litmus test. If a person has had any kind of experience, like let's say someone has decided to become a raw vegan, and they only will eat, raw fruits and vegetables now, and it changed their health and they're feeling so great. And they can go around to everyone else and be like, you have to become a raw vegan. No, it's the way to go. It's the way to go, because it was great for them and it was great for them at that time. But if a raw vegan comes up to you and is like, you're eating animals and it's wrong and you will suffer for it, that's not helpful at all. Or to doubt yourself and to be like, you know something, you're not supposed to eat those foods. You're supposed to be a raw vegan. It's not a moralistic thing. It's bad for your liver. Don't stop eating those things. And you can doubt yourself and be like, oh, maybe I should just only eat apples and strawberries too. But you know something? I'm here to tell you, like, I don't think that's a balanced diet. And that person might have done that for a short amount of time, and it might have been what they needed, but it is not a one-size-fits-all journey. So this is big. You know when a person has had a real moment of spiritual truth, when they share that truth with others in a way that is uplifting and accommodates for the variety of human experience. It is not a one-size-fits-all solution, and it's not fair to require everyone else to conform to your solution. If raw veganism or having an experience of Jesus or Buddha was transformative to you, then that is fantastic. But it is erroneous to impose that as a template for uplift on everyone else. When you're really uplifted, you're like, wow, I got so uplifted. And now I want everyone else to be so uplifted too, in the way that they need it for themselves at this time. And that requires a huge amount of wisdom and perspective, which is not always what happens, especially when people have a false light awakening. When they have a false light awakening, they're usually not having a balanced perspective with a lot of wisdom and contextualization. It's usually very tunnel vision, very focused and very limited. And Aurelia goes on to say, I think because of the level of healing trauma I've been able to experience with all the help I have had, it somehow provoked them. And that can happen too. Like, let's say, to use food as an example, let's say you're a person who's like transcended eating disorders or disordered eating. You eat everything, you enjoy everything. You're like, yep, sometimes I eat fried chicken and sometimes I eat ice cream, and most of the time I eat, whatever, healthy, lean foods and do lots of exercise. But then someone who's got a lot of baggage about food and has gone raw vegan comes up to you and is like, hey, you can't eat that ice cream, you can't eat that fried chicken because I'm a raw vegan and I'm still working through my disordered eating. And you're like, wait, like I'm healthy and balanced and I can eat and celebrate a little bit of everything. It's like, no, stop eating and celebrating a little bit of everything. I need for you to be limited like me. Like, get it? Some people are that way. And some people are that way in religion and with spiritual attainment. Many people want to save your souls. They're like, don't do this, always do this. Then you will go to heaven. You will be judged, correctly. But the real truth of going to paradise or attaining the bliss state that is paradise in the human form is to follow 100% your own inner guidance. So really what we all should want to do and wish for one another and work to help one another, reestablish your own divine connection, reestablish your own divine connection, reestablish your own divine connection. And this goes, I want to spend a little bit of time speaking from my notes because I talk a lot about how the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a way to transcend the genetic, cultural, and energetic limitations that have been placed in humanity, moving from the insight level of dark blue and the brow to the purely divinely guided level of the violet chakra up here. This is crossing the duat. This is a whole area of turbulence and lower astral caca poo-poo that you got to get through to be able to get to this level of pure divine insight where you can really know what the F is really going on. And the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is an opportunity or a technique to be able to transcend getting across those levels so that way you can get over all of the barriers and all of the obstacles and really connect to divinity. And then from that divine connection, receive all of the guidance that you need from God, like your personalized diet plan or your personalized life journey, because each one of us is bio unique. Each one of us has a totally unique personality and soul, and everything about what we do is personalized. Diet, finances, social dynamics, mating and dating, and everything. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution to this. And so, yes, organized religion is hugely reductionist in that it does propose a one-size-fits-all set of externally imposed rules, which make you either a good person or a bad person. And same thing with many food diets. And sometimes these belief systems and food diets are intertwined together with different levels of veganism and vegetarianism in the Hindu world and the Buddhist world. Like, all of that is a lot of external control structure girdles on your midsection to try to externally guide you to be a moral and a good person. But really, I'm just going to say it again. You are a good person. You are already a good person. and that this is not about you trying to contort yourself into a more attractive pose to please a deity. The real deity is like, you're a good person and you're just the way you're supposed to be. And I love you. Many people in this world never really had that level of parental love, acceptance, and celebration. And so the judgmental God resonates as a type of parental figure. They're like, yep, mom and dad judged me and rejected me, and God judges and rejects me too. This is exactly the way life is structured. But I'm like, no, like God loves you, accepts you, and does not place conditions upon your, what it is to be good. You're good because you're good. And then in this world also, when we are faced with sufferings and difficulties, we cannot say those difficulties made me good. It didn't. Cancer and amputations and poverty does not make you good, but your response to those things exemplifies your goodness. When you help others and when you, reach beyond your own limitations, and when you balance out serving your own needs and serving the needs of your community, you exemplify what it is to be a good person. And you are a good person in this world that is hugely out of balance, incomprehensibly out of balance. I once wrote a song called Incomprehensible Rules. It's an instrumental. It does not have lyrics, but this is what this is about. When I first came here as a walk-in, my mind was consistently blown where I was just like, this place does not make sense. The rules here were incomprehensible. The things that are going on in terms of the hijacking of the chakra structures and then the subsequent pollution of human neurology and human consciousness is incomprehensible. And it makes it so difficult to navigate this space as someone who is innately good, innately generous, and innocent, and really here for purposes of growth and education. Because this world that you're in right now is not here to foster growth and education. And that, as I'm telling you that, you're like, the ice cream fell on the floor. That's it. I can't deal. I'm like, I'm very sorry that the ice cream fell on the floor. It's not supposed to. It's supposed to be a schoolhouse for learning, and it's supposed to be a beautiful, pristine environment, and it's not. And so the best that I can do is just get a new ice cream cone. So that way we don't have to be in grief and trauma of the loss of our ice cream cone. Let's get a better Atlantis. A non-invadable Atlantis that's not going to get screwed up like the old one did. Michael says, well, smart dust is in the air, water, food. Is FRL a great counter? Yes. So how does FRL help us against the unmentionables? I'm actually going to do a whole teaching about this when I'm in Sedona next week, but basically it has to do with how to clear and jump over obstacles. So on an abstract level, Flying Rainbow Lasagna allows you to jump onto a timeline where your difficulties are resolved. But Flying Rainbow Lasagna can also be used for detox in the body, to be able to vibrate out things that are invaders that are not supposed to be in you, and to create and generate new gifts and talents that will help you to be able to fight invaders and adversaries that technically you shouldn't have to fight. But so it's like you didn't come prepared for that level of battle. So you might not have those proclivities in your DNA, but the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, it's like the pasta machine. You can make pasta. It can be shaped like ravioli, or it can be shaped like wagon wheels, or it can be shaped like whatever. With your DNA, when you learned Flying Rainbow Lasagna, you can create all sorts of amazing new genetic abilities that can make it possible for you to fight against all of this stuff very effectively. I know, because I do it all the time. Yes. And so we're going even beyond the sense of transcending the discrepancies and distortions at the level of the duat or at the level of the afterlife and jumping directly to God. We do that, but in doing that, you can create new pasta shapes with your DNA that are hugely empowering and that you can use to respond effectively to the things around you. That's the best news that I have. So you don't just have to jump over like puddles of filth and be like, pinkies up, like I'm lifting my skirts, pinkies up, get over that filth. You could be like, wow, like I can pasta machine generate a way to clean up that film and then live in a pristine world. All right. You're totally getting it. You guys are great. Allison says, apologies. I had to step out for a bit. Returned at a point where you are saying we have to take responsibility for collective behaviors, not okay to harm puppies and kittens. Okay. So the question is, how do we stop others from going along with Nazi Germany behaviors? It was very difficult to resist the mandated subcutaneous pollutions. And Allison goes on to share that they lost their job and friends, and they were unable to visit their 92-year-old father in hospital. Understand. And if it had continued, I might have lost a connection to family who believed I was killing grandmas and children. We get it. It is overwhelming to think that what will happen if we have another round of this BS. I completely agree. I don't feel like I can get people to open their eyes, see what's right in front of them, much less prevent them from engaging in bad behaviors. Thank you so much for your insights and sharing about your personal experience. One approach that I think is flawed is to say we have to wake up the world. This is kind of the truther movement red pill, where you're like, yep, I'm going to meme these people into submission. Like I'm going to hit you with all of my research and statistics and propaganda, and I'm going to, propaganda to the truth. I'm going to convince you. I'm going to write expository essays. And you're the sheeple, you who I'm in this fictional conversation talking to, you're the NPCs in the sheeple, and I'm going to red pill you, and I'm going to awaken you. Yeah, I'm going to hold your eyeballs open while you look at documentaries about the truth, and then it's going to change and transform you on the inside. I don't agree with that proposal or that approach because it presumes the intelligence and the goodness of others. So here in this class, I have no problem saying that you're the best of the best. You're the good humans. You are good. Not everybody here is good. And some people, their ignorance and self-protection from the truth and from actual facts is intentional. Some of them do not want to learn. That it can be a fruitless task if you think that what is needed is to red pill the masses and get everyone to kind of get on board with you because they've been informed, and then they will suddenly roll up their sleeves and be like, that's it, time to storm the Bastille, and time to make things happen and have revolution. I don't think that is a correct approach, because I think that some people are in a state of willful ignorance. When these subcutaneous pollutions were presented to the population, many of us already intuitively knew that we didn't want to participate. Some people did some amount of self-research and then learned that they didn't want to participate. And many of us verbalized to other people, whatever you do, don't do this thing. But some people chose not to listen. This is big stuff. Like if someone tells you, like, whatever you do, don't do that thing, it's going to have bad consequences, and you choose to do that thing, then you must take responsibility for the thing that you did. And the thing that they did further reduced their ability to know and comprehend and also to engage in their own willpower. So they disempowered themselves. They did not want to listen. They disempowered themselves. And now it is an even more fruitless and difficult task to try to red pill them and convince them that they never should have done that in the first place, that they have only disempowered themselves now, because at this point, they're not running their own cognitive abilities. Something else is running their cognitive abilities. So at this point, I don't think that any amount of education is going to be helpful to the people around us who have been assimilated. And I hope that it's also clear that I don't dispose people or think of people as disposable. As when the inoculations happened, there were some people who were very severe and very harsh in their assessments. And they were like, look, if you have become polluted, I don't want you in my life. And they did that to their moms and their dads. So there was a huge gap that happened on many levels in many families from lots of different motivations. And some people in the truther community and the non-polluted community even thought, all of you polluted people are going to die. Don't be around me. goodbye, see ya. And I'm just gonna go live in the woods or something like that. And I'm like, I didn't agree with any of that. And I haven't protected myself from interaction with those who have been subcutaneously polluted. And if people have come to me for some kind of a healing, activation, clearing, or session work, and they have that in their body systems, I try to help them as much as I can, because some people really do regret it and want to change. And I think that there is a pathway back from that. You can reclaim your soul, but I think it takes an enormous amount of effort, even harder than running a marathon. Like running a marathon is hard enough. But when people have chosen that, they have a huge amount of regret. And then you have to find a way for them to be able to find self-compassion and self-forgiveness for their regret that they even did that. And then also to clear out the things that have been disempowering them. It's a very, very difficult journey, like up a steep incline for people to kind of get themselves out of that pit of self-blame and diminished willpower. It's really bootstrapping type of stuff where a person has to have an enormous effort to be able to do that. And those of us around a person can help them. And there's lots of biochemistry that you can do too to try to like help clear their body out. A person can reclaim their soul, but it requires an enormous, enormous effort to not get pulled down into that maelstrom and existential oubliette place where you go down the toilet into forgetfulness. But I feel it is not our job to open their eyes and get them to change. All right, just like this. If my neighbor's burning trash in his yard, I do not have to go to him with like a whole educational packet of information. Be like, this is why pollution is bad. This is what it's doing to your lungs. This is what it's doing to the water. You're responsible for this, this, and this. You shouldn't be doing what you're doing. I should not have to do that. But you know what I can do? I can take a fire hose and douse their disgusting trash fire, bulldoze it out of existence, and make it stop. So what I am proposing is for those of us who are empowered, have our willpower, have been as unpolluted as protected ourselves from pollution as much as we possibly can, to be empowered and to override the behavioralisms of those around us who have abdicated their power and who have aligned with the machine mind and who have allowed these agendas to be perpetrated upon them and in this world. So I don't expect them to fight. I don't expect them to be good fighters. I don't expect them to suddenly get a backbone and do the right thing, because they didn't do for many, many, many times throughout their life. They didn't do the right thing. And then this is just the coup de grace, cherry on top of the final time that they didn't do the right thing. So what is love? Don't go into that song. Everybody sings that 80s song. Don't do it. Love is really acceptance. When we recognize that a person has behavioral patterns that have been going on for their whole entire life. And when you require them to change or think that they're going to change, that's the antithesis of love. Acceptance is really like, that's who that person is, and that's the way that they are, and that's the things that they've done through their life. That is accepting of their limitations, accepting of their ignorances, accepting of their self-destructions, accepting of their destabilizations of community. But that doesn't mean that you're like, I accept you, please keep doing it. I'm like, I accept that you're trying to do that and that that's your behavioral pattern, but I don't think that that's okay for you to do that in the world. You know what? I accept me and who I am. And this is why I don't identify as a Buddhist, because I'm not like, oh, well, suffering is a part of life. Go get polluted and pollute our world. I will go meditate now. I'm like, no, I love myself. I'm like, stop this BS right now. I'm going to make you stop. No, I don't think that we should allow people to make choices and do things when they show how badly they have made choices in the past. And so, yes. So no, you're not allowed to start a garbage fire. This is basic social contract stuff. We have responsibilities towards one another in living in community and being alive in the same world together. And some of those social contract things have to do with caring for one another, feeding one another. If a person is injured, Like, you're not just going to be like, oh, well, like, I see you're spurting blood. Good luck with your problem. I'm going over here now. You can't be that way. You have to be like, wow, you're spurting blood. Can I help you? Can I call someone to help you? We owe things to one another as part of the social contract. But also, the social contract does not mean that I allow you your freedom to do stuff that harms or destabilizes our whole entire world. In fact, my social contract has to do everything with protecting our world so that we continue to have a world. So let's say you're like, I'm a scientist and I'm here in my laboratory creating horrible bioweapons. And I'm like, it is not part of my social contract to support those activities, to pay for those activities, or to allow them to simply go on. I can actually go in there to that laboratory and take those vials out of your hands and say, stop this immediately. You're not allowed to do these things. Literally, like that's like saying you're not allowed to light a big garbage fire in my neighborhood because this is the bad stuff. We have to do that. So this is, I don't really have to encourage you towards interventionism. If you're going to red pill someone, you're already intervening. You're intervening on the level of information, but information is not going to be enough. You're going to have to intervene on the level of behavioralism. You get it? So it's not going to be enough to say to someone like, hey, don't get the more recent pollutions. The previous ones are bad enough. They ain't going to listen. You're going to have to bulldoze their tire fire and make sure that they do not actually do these behaviors. It's not enough to just give them information and to be rational. That's not going to accomplish what you need to accomplish. You're going to have to be a lot more forceful in stopping your neighbors from doing things that are overtly harmful to you and to others. Yeah. So no convincing, no educating, no negotiating, but definitely acting directly. And Pedro says, I see things like this. Life is beautiful, but there's death. Ice cream is delicious, but can make you fat or rot your teeth. And we were perfect, but our DNA got corrupted. Before we had to endure the negative things in life and try to enjoy the good things, no matter how mixed they were. But now with the FRL, we can eat the ice cream and reject or rectify the part that fell on the floor. We can rewrite the bad parts of the story. It's our story, not the Pootie story. It won't be easy and fixed in a day, but we are becoming stronger and better at using the FRL, and we will do it. Beautifully well said. And then Michael is agreeing, says, yes, doing it, absolutely. So everything about Flying Rainbow Lasagna is my response to and my gift to response to the iniquities and injustices of the world, and my gift to humanity so that you have something you can actually do in response to those things, instead of just putting a palliative cream on the bee stings on your shoulder to actually get rid of the bees. Everything about Flying Rainbow Lasagna is affecting the world. It is I'm an interventionist. I am not passive. And the intervention that I propose with Flying Rainbow Lasagna is really at the highest level of reality creation and frequency. So even better than letter writing campaign or storming the Bastille or something like that is going directly to the way that our DNA and the blueprint of our DNA affects the blueprint of reality. We're really talking about directly creating through consciously creating directly with your mind or your consciousness things to happen in reality. So that's the best thing, and also requires the most level of responsibility. Because if you dance, and then you create structures and events in reality, then you have to be like, okay, I created those structures and events in reality. I have to take responsibility for them. Maybe they're not perfect. Maybe there's blowback. Maybe there's destabilization. What does that mean? It means you have to dance again. It means, and also when you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. If you adopt a baby puppy or a kitten because they're small and cute and they need help, you can't just be like, look, kid, I'm just feeding you once. Then you're going to get out and get a job. You're like, I'm going to take responsibility for the puppy and the kitten. I am committed to it for life. So when you start to lasagna, you're like, you know something? I'm contributing to reality. I'm making stuff happen. But you can't just be like, I danced once. Reality fixed. Now I go on and do other stuff. You have to be like, wow, I danced once, and now I need to dance again, and then dance again, and then dance again, and again, and again. And you're continually responding to the needs and requirements to fine-tune reality. But I would really, really encourage everyone to do their direct reality creation dance, and to intervene and to supersede the unhealed who are destroying your world. Being unhealed does not mean that a person gets to destroy themselves or their community or the fabric of space-time. Really, really big stuff. And you don't have to fix it by being like, I will heal everyone, and that way they will not be a danger anymore to any of us. Come here, girl. You can be instead recognizing that they are unhealed and say, they can't be empowered. They can't be given the tools that they can then apply to their destruction. So if I use the example of that scientist, I'd be like, look, this guy is unhealed. He can't have a laboratory to do these horrific, monstrosity experiments. I'm not going to let that happen. Hold on a second. Brief pause. Pedro says over here, I guess I'm trying to say that we don't have to accept the bad things as inevitable now that we have the FRL and Aurora's teachings. Thank you for that. Thank you, and I absolutely agree. So that's a huge part of my philosophy and my worldview and my behavioralism, is to recognize that there are many, many imbalances and injustices, and then flying rainbow lasagna is to respond to them and to do something about them. Suzuka loves you, just giving you kisses. Yes, to be able to be empowered and do something. And the thing that you do is a genetic dance that directly relates to reality structure. So let me just, I want to go back to my notes over here. Wait, I have to do. So I didn't do a lot about the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but it's all in my notes over here. But I want to get to the second part where I'm talking about flying rainbow lasagna and the connection to reality creation in Christ. And then Charlie B had a question. I made you wait the whole entire time. You emailed me your question. I made you wait the whole entire time before I'm going to talk about it, though. Sorry about that. Okay. There's many, many parallels between the story of Jesus being crucified and destroyed, and then, rectified and revivified again, and the death of Atlantis. That you can look at that story as the death of the culture of Atlantis and the dormancy of your own inner potentials, and then the revivification of your own divine connection and Christ-like qualities as you are becoming empowered again as a full spectrum human, okay? That's why the allegories spoken about in the New Testament, where he was able to heal diseases, to instant manifestation of things like food, to nourish people, and levitation, those are all dormant powers that we had in the time of ancient or concurrent Atlantis. Each one of us is the living embodiment of Christ. And we need to connect to the source, which is this central convergence point here, in order to get guidance and nourishment about how to be the living Christ here. So if there was a teacher 2,000 years ago, that teacher was in the cultural context of the Roman Empire and, Talmudic Judaism, a very, very different world than what we presently live in, even though we have, of course, vestigial outgrowths of both of those power structures here. But we need to be receiving the exact directives about how we are to embody the living Christ in this time place. And also, please know that we are part of a grid or a network of many organisms that are connected in Christ consciousness. Also, I've spoken about this before. This stuff is Antichrist hardware. And if you're wondering, like, where are all of these great magical Christs? The answer is they are all being assaulted by this stuff. Our world is not the only world that has that level of pollution in it. And many, many worlds are afflicted by this. Otherwise, they'd be here helping us. So please know that too. Some people are like, the ice cream fell on the floor. I blame God. How can this happen? And they look at the encroachment of AI and transhumanism and the injections and things like that. And they're like, how can this happen? How come somebody didn't stop it? Where's cosmic law enforcement? And I'm like, I am here. I'm cosmic law enforcement. And the reason why there is not a larger armada here instantaneously to help you, it's not just because you've got blockades and satellites and force fields preventing it from coming in, it's because it is literally the level of Christ consciousness is under assault. It's a war. And I want you to know how big the scale of this war is. Like, imagine if you lived in a small village in Africa in World War II, and your village was being, strafed with machine gunfire from the sky. You're like, why is this happening to my village? And you have to be like, look, girl, like, this is not just about your village. This is a giant world war that is affecting all of these different countries and is creating an enormous amount of destabilization. So you have many, many, many layers of reality, many, many parallel and concurrent time places, all of which are under spiritual bombardment by Antichrist hardware and software. So it's not just your world. And it's part of the disempowerment cultural overlays to be taught to sit passively and to practice nonviolence and to wait for someone else to come in and help and fix you. You can't do that. Cannot do that. Big, 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 big. And so you're getting an updated message right now that it's like SOS. There's big stuff that is happening in the world, and you cannot rely upon an external organization to come and rescue you. You have to fix, heal, and save your own community. Have to fix, heal, and save yourself, and fix, heal, and save your community members. So you can look at the story and crucifixion of Jesus Christ as a story of the fall of Atlantis and then its eventual rebirth through us as we are, transcending those genetic limitations, the splicing and dicing. But you can also look at it as an allegory for your own body. This stuff goes into the pineal gland and attacks the pineal gland. That's like Christ on the cross. And the diminishment of divine connection that happens as a result of that, and the confusion and difficulties at traversing the lower astral, the duat, or the technologically cracked up world of augmented reality, the world of illusions and false light, world of illusions and false light. And then coming forth in today, being able to reconnect to the real sun, the real stars, true light, and know truth from fiction, and know truth from false light, and to be 100% identifying with true light and rejecting and releasing any of the artificial overlays of false light that might have been placed inside of us. That was big stuff that I definitely wanted to get through. There's so much that I didn't talk about here because I wanted to make a big distinction between death and ascension. And we're going through a personal and planetary ascension right now. And the best teaching is to stay alive, not to die. Because if you die, you're just going to hit the space fence. You're not going to actually go into freedom. And your next life is not necessarily, or incarnation or opportunity to be alive is not necessarily going to be one of healing and rectification and freedom, especially if this world that we are in becomes further inundated and free will is more diminished by these technological contrivances. So please listen to this. Stay alive. Make that your mandate. And this is difficult because the Christian religion is really a hijacked religion that has become a death cult that implants the expectation that you must die first and then you will be able to go to heaven. And a lot of the work that I do when I talk with people in personal sessions and the work that I do in removing limitations from their DNA and reawakening dormant potential is just to convey that message that in this time place, the best thing that you can do to honor God, honor divinity, honor the gift of life, and to honor being in Christ is not to die. And dying will not put you into a heavenly state where you are directly connected to Christ. Not in this time place, not with these levels of technological interference. Dying in this time place means that you will probably go into some kind of a container, limbo, or artificially stuck place. And it might take a very long time for you to get resolved and get out of there and then have another opportunity. I didn't do enough with my little diagram. Okay, so when you're one of those little red lines, you reach the membrane of death, and then what that is the final equation of you. And that whole entire membrane of death is actually filling up with the final moments of you. Everything from like when you died 1 minute after you were born, when you died when you were 5 years old, when you died when you were 9 years old, all of these deaths line the membrane of death. They're all snapshots of your life at the moment of death. And they all contain the full trajectory of your life up until that moment. But you're not supposed to have you're not supposed to have lived or embodied any of those experiences. And you're not supposed to be on the membrane of death as consciousness exploring what you did wrong. And the infrastructure of demonic consciousnesses that already exists in that death membrane can slow down your self assessment process. Instead of something that might have taken a mere moment to recognize, like you reach the membrane of death and you're like, oh, I did it all wrong. I need to go back to the beginning and I need to make this critical, different decision at this moment, like wear a bike helmet, right? Or don't jump on that trampoline on that day, or don't do that thing in that way. But instead of that immediate recognition and then going back and trying your life again, you might be held as a soul prisoner by the putis, residual consciousnesses, who might limit how fast you can have those inner recognitions and releases of attachments and healings, and create even additional trauma for you in your afterlife presence and slow down the entire process. And that is what has been happening. This is why I have told people for a very long time, death is not the release that you might wish for it to be. It is also not a pristine learning environment or like defending your life, a courtroom where you're going to get a fair assessment by some kind of an external cosmic judge of all worlds. No, you know who's in the afterlife? Crazy things. Crazy, insane, grotesque monsters who might put on a mask and be like, I am the judge of all worlds and I have determined that you're not good enough and you're going to have to be tortured by these guys over here. And those guys over there are snickering behind their hands. They're like, yeah, because they know that that's not the judge of all worlds. They know that that's just a total fabrication. And you as an innocent creature might be like, oh, I guess I've been judged unworthy time. And I have an expectation from my cultural paradigm that I'm here to get tortured until I'm a good enough person to go to heaven. Okay, demons, torture me. Can't be that way. Can't be that way at all. You have to recognize how much the cultural teachings about death and afterlife have been hijacked and distorted, and the satanic literature of the Bible has implanted a series of unfair expectations in you about what your afterlife is going to be like. And even big point here, made people reject the gift of life itself, because many people here are not even appreciating what you do have and the potentials for improvement in what you do have. Many people simply long for death as a form of escapism or as an existential end to their existence. And that is rejecting the gift of life. Life is an amazing gift. Being here and being alive is amazing. I even call out people who are in the world of spiritual attainment and who are looking for some form of escapism from the body. So even if you're not necessarily agreeing with Judeo-Christian paradigms of reward, punishment, and paradise, you might be a part of a spiritual viewpoint world where you think the body is a prison and I can't wait to get out of this imprisonment body and be flying around as a free spirit. One day after I die, everything will be better. No, what you need to do is fully inhabit your body. You need to stay alive, fully inhabit your body. Clear out all of the genetic splicing and dicings that have been perpetrated upon humanity and taken you away from your divine connection and away from your immortality. Return to being an immortal, divinely connected being. Transform and heal your body. And also, when you do that, you're not going to be like this. All right, like I'm a transformed and healed person. I'm made of pure light, and I live in a total garbage heap where everything is wrong and gross and disgusting around me. No, you're going to be like, I am made of pure light, and this place is junk up disaster. I got to fix it up because I'm a being of pure light, and beings of pure light, radiate truth, radiate and embody God's divine willpower, and you're going to see things that are not divine and that are not light and that are not truthful every place. You'd be like, that's not divine and that's not light, and I'm going to do something about it because I'm here and I'm alive and I'm empowered. That is what you really need to be doing. Okay. Humanity has been on a perilous journey, going from this level of anthropomorphic viewpoint and Christ consciousness to this level of divine connection and pure abstraction for like the past 2,000 years. Okay. And right now, this moment in human history and spiritual attainment and advancement is the moment of connecting to the singularity that is here, not through transhumanism. Transhumanism is antichrist, but through the negation of technology and the rejection of antichrist hardware and software in our bodies and the rejection of all false light, we return to the source, which is also our destination. And when we have reconnected our crown chakra to the source, then what we're able to do is receive all of the nourishment and guidance that informs us about what we need to do in each moment. And really being a good person or a moral person means following those directives, which might be different and unique for each person. Okay, so now I have to get into deeper stuff because Earth is on her journey of ascension and higher consciousness too. So just as you have as an individual a time vortex like this with multiple possible peripheral realities that you explore that lead to your demolishment, until you finally find the one version that is the eternal story of self that brings you back home to your origins, the planet is on the same journey. The planet, because this relates to planetary invasion and the destruction of Atlantean culture, and even to present perils such as nuclear conflagrations or environmental degradations, or the type of destabilization that happens when this stuff, which is actually exotic tech, gets implanted into the neurology and viewpoints of many of the organisms on this earth. Earth is making a choice. She's like, I'm not going to die. Earth is observing the mantra, stay alive, stay alive, stay alive. And what we have to do is to create an amazing new potential. That is what Flying Rainbow Lasagna really is about, innovating, finding or creating a new timeline where you don't die. So all of these other timelines, like there's plenty of Book of Revelation timelines. That's why I also call the Bible satanic literature. Again, apologies for those who find uplift in the Bible. But when I look at that as a piece of literature and a narrative structure, it starts out by saying, you were in paradise, you did something very wrong, got ejected from paradise, bad stuff, bad stuff, bad stuff, and then you die. That's a bad story. That's a very, very bad story. And I know that many people soften it with saying, well, I know you're going to die, but then you go to heaven, right? After you die, then you're going to go to heaven, and then everything is going to be great. And I'm like, that is still not a good story, because I think a much better story is started out in paradise, you got unfairly ejected from paradise, bad stuff, bad stuff, bad stuff, and then you got healed and you didn't die and you made the world paradise, or you inhabited paradise again. I think that's a much better story. That narrative restructuring is what happens as a result of Flying Rainbow Lasagna. We are smashing religious paradigms. We are smashing cultural paradigms and expectations, really, really deep imprinting and expectations of what you think is going to happen in your world, because there's a lot of catastrophism. Rejecting that catastrophism as Earth is rejecting those catastrophe timelines. And so there is a splitting of worlds, as people in the world of spiritual attainment are talking about this. Like, some people are going to go on this timeline, they're going to go over here and they're going to experience catastrophe. And some people are going to go on this timeline over here. All I can tell you is, in your vortex, there is only one timeline that is a viable timeline that leads you to ascended mastery, reconnection with source and the divine consciousness and, you know, your innate divinity, and continued eternal life. All of the other timelines are non-viable. It's not like you have multiple ascension pathways where you're like, maybe I'll ascend like this, or maybe I'll ascend like this, or maybe it'll be like, no, one ascension timeline. And our planet has one ascension timeline too, because her life vortex is directly shaped the same way that ours is. So there is not a way to say this nicely. Can't say to people who have made horrible choices, like, you go on your timeline and ascend in your timeline. Like, no, there's not a viable pathway. If they go on those timelines, they're not going to have a viable future. They're going towards entropy. They're going towards non-being. The best thing to happen if you die or you end up in, you know, one of these non-viable timelines is to make it fast Band-Aid. Not Band-Aid where you're tortured by demons over hundreds of millennia or whatever it is, while you slowly realize, like, oh, I made terrible mistakes and life choices and I should have done things different. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Should not be over the course of millennia in some kind of hyperdimensional hell realm. It should be instantaneous. So may it be instantaneous for anybody that ends up on those timelines where they're like, oh, SHIT, there is a brick wall and there's no more life experience to happen. What should you do? Hang out for billions of years, suffering and torment? No. Admit to all mistakes immediately. So if you were in the movie Defending Your Life, you should not be like, I am a good person and I didn't do anything wrong. You should be like, no, I've made huge errors in my life. This, and this was really wrong. And then you should say, I want to fix it. How can I fix it? So instead of defending the indefensible or justifying the unjustifiable, to instead take the pragmatic approach and to say, how can I fix this? For some people, the debts that they've accrued are so large, there's no fixie fix. There's just entropy. That's for people that have been really, really, really bad. You know who's really, really bad? The scientists and military people who came up with different subcutaneous pollutions and have consensually or non-consensually placed this into our reality, because that has been a 100% anti-ascension agenda. It's not even the same as, like, if you're going to inoculate someone against tetanus or whatever, fine, you get your tetanus shot, I'm going to ascend, right? Because it's not going to affect me. But once you start to do stuff with DNA, you're affecting everyone. And if these scientist guys did stuff with DNA, they accrued a debt that is so large they will never be able to pay it. And if they go to the afterlife and they're trying to defend themselves, this is it. This is paraphrasing of how that experience would be. All right, they're like, order in the court, hear ye, come listen to this guy. This guy's life, he made a bunch of DNA inoculations in the world, and he's going to open his mouth and say, this and that. This is the answer. You incurred a debt that is so big, it is the size of infinity. There's nothing you can do or say to ever make it better. You can't go back in and try to do good deeds and fix your life or fix anybody's life, because, again, the debt that you've incurred is infinite. You cannot defend this. You cannot justify this. All you can do is go into a state of non-existence. And he'd be like, oh, I'm just going to shut up now and go into a state of non-existence. Yes, that is the only option. That is entropy. And I talk about this a lot as a part of Flying Rainbow Lasagna, but it's one of the most powerful and profound things to embody and to recognize. Entropy is the solution to not have any more pooties stuck on the membrane of death, destabilizing the fabric of space-time, because they have such an enormous debt that they can't possibly get out of there. So the second part of my notes is really beautiful. That is all about flying rainbow lasagna, reconnecting DNA to Christ consciousness. And the very, very last thing that I write there is the connection between the flying rainbow lasagna and Christhood and eternal life. It's a lot. I want to go through all of it, but we've already had a very long class. But now I want to go, finally, Charlie B, thank you for your patience. Took the time to write out some questions to me. So I want to be able to respond to them exactly. So the real question that Charlie B wanted to know is, let me read this. He says, I'm specifically trying to understand if your billiard ball self, your unresolved trauma, who you are when you die and hit the membrane of death, and you no longer have volition, you're just the echo of yourself. Is that self actually self-aware and able to reflect and thus able to resolve such that a new life could start? Or is it merely bottled trauma that is not actually you and you don't really have it as a part of your eventually ascended self on this journey? So this is beautiful. It allows me to speak to what actually happens in that membrane of death. How volitional and sentient are you after death? How much can you change, learn, and grow? And the answer is, you are mildly self-aware and sentient in that membrane of death, but really no longer volitional. And that's why it's so, you're easy pickings for something that is like a demon or a putti, because you are really not able to effectively move yourself. The flow of the membrane of death is what moves you. You are largely non-volitional. You also achieved that vector and hit the membrane of death from that particular angle based upon the choices you made in life. So every single choice you made about turning left or turning right or eating peanut butter and jelly adds up to who you were in that moment at the moment of your death. But at the moment of your death, you do not grow and change and evolve very much at all. You really just have an accurate assessment of who you were up to that moment. And the reason for that is because there is not life force on the membrane of death. And the membrane of death is never supposed to have life force there. That's actually a huge aberration and wrongness. You're supposed to have completely clear membranes with no life force there. So the idea that there's even anyone beyond the putties, but there's anyone putting life force there, it is energy out of place and consciousness out of place. So in order to learn, grow, and innovate, you need life force. We experience this in our physical bodies as creative energy, sexual energy, passions, and also, why do you think we're here? We're here because we want to learn and grow. Cannot effectively learn and grow in the stasis field of what is considered a higher dimensional heavenly paradise. In that world, everything is already predetermined, everything is already set, everything is already coagulated. And there's not very much opportunity for rearranging, restructuring, learning and growing. That's it. Why did we read the brochure and come here in the first place and get into this wacky situation? The answer is because we wanted to learn and grow. That's the real thing. When you read the brochure, it's not because you're like, wow, I can't wait to feel what it's like to swim or whatever, eat ice cream. No, that is not why we came. We came because we wanted to learn and grow on a soul level as pure consciousness. And that is really the motivation that is beautiful and positive and just for all of us. Like, why is this fern here? I have this little house plant over here, or this tree outside of my window. Why is my dog here? Why did any organism come here and be alive in the world, even down to the microbial level? And the answer is to learn and grow, because levels of self-exploration and growth are simply not available to us in the higher dimensional levels. When I say stasis, it's not the same as the stasis field around our planet, but it is like imagine a note that's just one note, just like boop, just one note. There's not a lot of changing, growing, evolving that happens. We have to be alive to do that stuff. And that's why we come into these incarnational cycles, so that we can accrete more light, accrete more wisdom, grow and evolve as souls. And I told you when you get in the beginning of this class here today, when you get to that culmination and you ascend, you have your I am God moment, and you exit this level of reality, your infinite journey continues. You don't just be like, okay, time to sit on the interdimensional couch. I'm all done. No more. I'm in retirement. No, you're like, I'm ready for the next adventure. So you master this level of reality and the lessons of this level of reality, but then you ascend into the next level, and you're continually ascending in embodiment and growing and learning from the process of being embodied. These are lessons and abilities to learn that are not available to us when we are not embodied. And I will also say very, very clearly that the pollutions and non-pristine aspect of this system that we're in are making it very, very difficult for us to learn the lessons that we really need to learn, because we didn't come here just to crap around and to have nonsense and be filled up with nonsense and to fight against evil. All of that is actually just way, way off your path. We came to learn lessons of like, what is it like to play in a beautiful symphony of life? And like, we're all at war and punching each other in the face and trying to survive. No one's learning the lessons of what it is to make beautiful music. So disheartening to me, because I'm like, this is BS. We are supposed to be here to learn to make beautiful music. So the rectification and sending certain organisms to entropy and psychopathology to entropy and the cleansing of this system here is essential to restore it to be a place where we can even learn and fulfill the needs or motivations for why we came into existence in the first place. How do you transcend reality? How do you ascend? How do you not hit the membrane of death? The logical answer is play all the right notes. But the emotional, intelligent answer is learn the lessons you need to learn from being here. And those lessons are not lessons of punishment a la Little Bunny Foo-Foo or Christian or Judeo-Christian punishment and reward system. They are lessons of what it is to harmonically integrate your personality with the personalities of many other organisms, both here and throughout the cosmos. And we're not yet getting the opportunity to do that learning, which is why we haven't ascended and transcended. And so you got to clean up the joint first. This is big stuff. Not going to ascend from this garbage strewn, gross place. We got to clean up the gross place so that we can even make beautiful music, so that we can have the fulfilling experience, so that we can then ascend. Because you don't ascend kind of like a person who's like, I'm running away from evil clowns. Get me out of here. Get me out of here. Whoosh, ascend. No. Ascension is not escapism or running away from psychopaths. You know what you got to do? You got to face the psychopaths. You got to be like, evil clowns, get out of here. If you're not allowed to be here, F you. And then after you get the evil clowns out of your world, then you're like, okay, now let's start to make beautiful music. And you make beautiful music for thousands of years. And then you're like, wow, that was amazing. Now that I have fulfilled my purpose, now I am ready to go on to the next level. It is a completely different quality of ascension than fearful escapism from psychopathology. So wait, back to this. Pedro says, I guess I'm trying to say that we don't have to accept the bad things. Oh, wait, I already got that. Good. So Charlie B, I hope that I spoke effectively. He says, that makes total sense. You are moved by the membrane of death. Yes. You have no life force through which you can grow and evolve. Yes, great answer. That really helps. Thank you. You're so very welcome. And I appreciate your thoughts. And thank you for emailing them to me. And I apologize that it took me 3 hours and 24 minutes to actually answer your question. Thank you. Thank you. Moving back on some of these. Joyce, Cheeky loves you, honey. And Suzuka loves you. Joyce says, love that Cheeky and her awesome mom. Thank you, sister. You're so welcome. Thank you guys for loving on Cheeky, because she's like an essential aspect of my ascension experience here. I just really affirm that over and over, you guys, your cats and your dogs, and if you have horses or other animals in your life, these are not satellites or peripheries at all. These are the main dish. So when Cheeky comes in, she's like, are you done with class yet? Can I have some food? Like, I have to interact with Cheeky. So thank you for celebrating that. Mary says, I need the rainbow lasagna to recover my health. We need the protocol to keep ourselves alive. Absolutely, Mary. It's something that I'm very happy to teach, share, and embody to people. It's definitely more than something that is either a 5-minute explanation, or even, I would say, if I had a week to talk with you endlessly about it, it'd be more than that. The journey towards total health and self-attainment and self-fulfillment is synonymous with the journey of ascension, because as you are awakening your light body and getting back to your divine connection, you use your inner eye like a microscope and a telescope to look within, and you see everything that's inside of you, and you see all of your cellular structure, and you see the cell membranes choosing either 1 molecule of water or 5 molecules of water, and then you become consciously aware of and consciously in control of the aspects of your body that need healing or rectification or rebalancing. And that's, you start local and then act global. You begin with the healing and rebalancing of your own body, and then you move into the healing and rebalancing of your whole entire community. And again, this takes time, and this is not something that is done just as running and escaping from evil clowns. Fight the evil clowns so that you have the privilege and the opportunity to be able to look within you at your body, learn about what is out of balance, and fix it. And I have this as a like a prophecy or whatever. Every single one of you, you might feel things about your body. You're like, I don't like my this and I don't like my that, and I'm too this and I'm not enough that. I'm aware of this. I'm totally aware of how many people feel self-judgmental and non-celebratory of your body. But when you go through this process of reconnecting to divinity, flying rainbow lasagnaing with the source, and getting back up to light speed, you will celebrate your body in the utmost way that you possibly can. You will not wish to be a different size, shape, or race, or have different anything, different qualities. You will be, because you will just the cultural isms of people who don't like their natural hair texture or their natural eye shape or their natural breast size. Why plastic surgery is in the world. When you have this experience of how to heal yourself, you will celebrate your body so much that you will not want to be in any other body. And you will not say, like, my body is too short, or my this is too small, or my that is too big. You will be so happy and grateful that you are in your body. And you will also feel that there is no way for you as identity to be separated from your body. As all of these spiritual traditions in the world of death cults talk about, either get out of your body, kill your ego, astrally project, escape, Calgon take me away, or die and go to Christian heaven. None of those things will ring true to you anymore, because you will be like, I am innately connected to my body. It's not like your body is a horse that you're riding and you're going to jump off your horse and get on a new horse. That doesn't happen, because that mentality is the mentality of the mortal who is going to die and then go through the karmic washing machine and then get another body and try to do this whole thing over again. We are in our ascension cycle, when this is your body. This is your eternal body, and you're going to be in your eternal body for a long time. But you're not always going to look the same, and you're not always going to have this, the same morphogenic appearance, but you will still be the same person, and your body will change and transform. And your body, as you are coming to comprehend what it is to be embedded in time, the fact that you have a body that is on a timeline here, from birth to ascension, you occupy this level of time-space reality. Your body is your anchor. Your body is your planet that you live on. Even when you transcend living in the physical, in time, you've had a physical body, and you will go and have wonderful adventures, but your body is still an anchor, okay? So I am Aurora, and I am a higher dimensional presence and a collective that is bouncing around on this network of light, not in a physical body. But I had a physical body in ancient Atlantis. That is the anchor for my consciousness and the origins of my consciousness. And that's why I love this planet. And that's why I refuse to allow this planet to be destroyed. I love this planet. I care about the culture here. And also my origins are here. And that is incredibly important. Like I've talked about this. If you get in a clank metal spaceship and you fly away from your planet, you go insane. You don't have a body anymore. You're like a disembodied ghost, and you will just crave the smell of soil after the rain, or what it sounds like when crickets are chirping at night, or anything that is just, you might take it for granted, the wetness of water. And when you don't have a planet and you don't have a physicality presence like that, go crazy. And that's what these ghostly presences and putis and demonic presences, that's what they are. And that is what clank metal spaceship using extraterrestrials are. They are psychotic in their amputation from their home world. And they are now disembodied, disassociated presences who run around looking for a body to be within. So all of that being said, that's kind of like the precursor. Mary, all of that I just gave you is the beginning of body healing, and then it goes from there. There's so much, I just have so much I can teach and share with people. Pedro says we can't ask an ascended master, higher being, or demon to show us his ID to know he's really who he claims to be. But if we ask it to show us love, could show us if there's really one of the good guys, or can they deceive us with that too? Okay, great question. Because my litmus test before I'm going to talk to anybody, like on the astral world or non-embodied plane, and also here in this world too, I'm like, do you have a unique soul signature, what's a caller ID? And also, do I feel love from you? And in this world here, well, I mean, let's talk about the astral world. There's many astral imposters where they're like, I am Jesus. And I'm like, okay, Jesus, since you're the Lord of love and compassion, first of all, give me your unique loves, give me your unique signature so I know it's you. And then hit me with that love. Hit me with your love. Let me feel it, man. And they never do it. Never, ever do it. And that's because they're imposters and they are totally unprepared to like show their ID and give a real feeling of love. And also because love is like some amazing taste. It's like, you know, the taste of chocolate or something that is so wonderful and evocative. And there's no way to fake it. And if someone is like, yes, here's sawdust, this is love, you're like, ugh, like that does not taste like love at all. So the love signature is a crucial test, a litmus test, to a hurdle to acquire and make people jump over. Now, in this world here, there are some people who are not even human anymore, but they're in a biological container and they're full of this stuff and connected to AI. I don't get a love vibe off of them either. And so I've had to learn how to apply those standards that I usually use for the non-embodied, the disembodied, to those who are embodied, as I think that there are a lot of empty shells that are walking around here that have a body, but no more heart and no more divine connection. And that they are imposters of what it is even to be human. Difficult stuff, because I don't want you to go into sociopathic depersonalization and Dwayne Hubler the joint. Don't do that. You know what I'm talking about. Breakfast of Champions. No, the blood is real. Sorry, Chicky's barking at a delivery man. The blood is real. The blood is not merely ketchup. Don't get a machete or a machine gun and decide that the world is only full of NPCs and that you can go wild and do whatever you want to do. No, but be selective about who you interact with, who you let into your world, and who you have tact and a rapport with. Michael says, thank you, Aurora Angel Light. You're so welcome. Beautiful little nickname there. And Suzuki says, I have two chihuahuas too, Jackson and Mika. All three are cutest things in my world, especially their beautiful little ears. They have the best ears and they're velvety soft. And we already talked about my strange and bizarre attraction to the smell of dog's feet, which smell exactly like Fritos corn chips. I love them. I love my dog. She's unabashedly my soulmate. So I'm so happy that you have your own little soulmate boss family members there. And the reason for this is there's just much less of a barrier of connectivity between myself and Cheeky in terms of just pure love and pure commitment to one another and pure loyalty. It's very, very hard to find that in the human realm right now, especially when so many humans have aligned with AI and are depersonalized and are not even really in their own body vessels anymore. So people in this class are amazing people. And I'm continually so grateful that I'm connected to you in my class, that I'm able to do retreats and meet people in person, that I'm able to do personal sessions with people. Like, I feel really blessed that I have the highest quality people that are connecting with me and that I have these conversations. And I also recognize, like, you guys are the outliers and the unique ones, and that the numeric majority of people are just not at the same level. And so that's why I'm very selective. I'm selective about who I share my dance with, and I'm selective about who I share these teachings with. And I am very, very pleased and grateful for the people that find me, find my work, and spend time with me by listening to these classes, being here in class, talking, sending me emails. Like, it means the world to me. And I feel, again, very, very lucky to be connected to you and to have so many really good people in my life, truly. Pedro says, I remember when I first started to watch your lessons, I asked if we could use the FRL at the moment of death. Now that you have more updated lessons, can we or can't we avoid the membrane using the FRL? I think that not only can we avoid the membrane of death, we must. I think that it is non-negotiable for me, and I hope for everyone who finds this video. And I think this would be a good thing for me to complete this teaching on. We must be uncompromising. We cannot die. And so when I talk about the teachings of other teachers or guides from previous generations, their trajectory might have been different. It might have been appropriate for them or someone of that time to die and to get into different bodies, to have different levels of experiences. That's it. But in this time and place, my best advice for who we are and what we are facing right now is uncompromisingly, do not die, and make that a commitment in yourself and to your cellular structure, and talk to your body. Be like, body, I love you. You're coming with me, and I'm not leaving you anywhere. And it's amazing how the body responds, because just as a little bit of a personal sharing, I came into this body, which had had an actual metabolic death. And the cells of this body felt what it felt like to have the spirit depart and to be left behind. And they all felt like this. They felt, well, like, that's not fair. They felt the ice cream feeling. The cells of the body felt so cheated that they weren't getting to do the ascension experience. And it took me many years of being in my body to kind of talk to my body and be like, hey, like, you're not going anywhere. I'm sticking with you. We're going everywhere together. And that commitment, when the body really internalized that, which was really not until 2015. And I came here in 2001. So I was here for literally 14 years before my body really absorbed the truth of that information. And when it did, my health completely transformed. My body completely responded in a much more expansive and positive way to all of the energies that I was putting into it. And I maintain that commitment. So it's just like me and Cheeky, like, we go everywhere together. If she hears me start the car, she knows, like, I'm just warming up the engine. I'm not going anywhere without you. You're getting in the car with me. You got it? Make that commitment to your body. And I think that your body and your cells of your body will really respond. I have a whole thing. Every time for class, I prepare, and then every time I go off on many tangents and use up all my time. But I wanted to teach you guys about how physically, when you die, your cells of your body stay alive, and there's some genetic movement, even for like 3 days after there's metabolic death. There is still life in the cells of the body, even after your larger overarching cognitive presence has left the body. And those cells are like, imagine like you're dancing, the person dies, and the cells are like, okay, keep dancing, guys, keep dancing. And then after a little while, it's like, something is wrong, but keep dancing as much as you can. And then, like, the body is decomposing and falling apart. And the cells are like, just keep dancing, guys, just keep dancing. Like, it's tragic. It is tragic from their viewpoint. And everything from the cellular viewpoint changes and improves when you're like, we are sticking together. We are not going anywhere. I'm right here with you, and we are both going to accelerate to light speed. And the cells of the body are like, hooray! Like, we're going together. We're going together. Do it. It will be transformative. Talk to your body in that way. Pedro says, love the lasagna. Thank you, Aurora. Very, very welcome. So I think now it is time. Tiki and I did do a good walk earlier today, but I think now it is time for me to get some good exercise with her. Melly says, thank you, Aurora, and everyone for another excellent class. Thank you to Miss Cheeky for her patience. Have a wonderful retreat in Sedona. I will be dancing in solidarity with you from home. Thank you for that. And that's actually a beautiful little segue there, Melly, because I want people to know that the Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance, it is non-local to time and space. It means you don't have to be actually at the space-time coordinates of the Desert Rose Retreat Center with me in order to dance and have an impact. So I'm encouraging everyone, connect with my energy field, do your particular unique Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance. If you want to, you can find my music. You can find, the SoundCloud playlists and things like that. Listen to music that it encourages you, or connect with my music. And yes, connect with the energy field of that. Suzuka says, thank you, Aurora. Thanks, Cheeky, for being so cute. Cheeky, you got a lot of friends. And Mary says, sending my love to you and your ascended masters. Just got talking about our dogs. And Pedro says, you have my Merkabahs with you. Thank you. Thank you for all of the energetic support and protection. And when we dance for everyone. We dance for this world. We dance for the fabric of time, space. We are going to transform, and we are going to do so with so much joy and artistry and amazing, really fun and creativity. So thank you for that. That's actually a perfect note for me to end upon. So I look forward to returning next week. Watch reruns, do your homework, and then I'll be back the week of, let me look on the calendar. It's, I'll be back on September 11th. That'll be a fun day. Good job, everyone. Positive blessings to you. Thank you very much, everyone.